All right, then. I hereby call to order the November 7th meeting of the Town of Frisco Planning Commission. It does take, Kim, you take roll these days? Sorry. Thank you. You take roll?
Commissioner Conley?
Here.
Commissioner Day?
Here.
Commissioner Forsythe?
Here.
Commissioner Stabile?
Here.
And Commissioner Withrow.
Here.
Commissioner Lesmes and Tain are absent.
Awesome, thank you. So the previous Planning Commission meeting minutes have been distributed. Commissioners have any comments on those?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Minutes will stand. Next, we're going to open the floor for public comment. If anyone has any public comment on an item that's not on tonight's agenda, this is your opportunity to step to the microphone and speak to us. Anybody here for something not on tonight's agenda online anywhere? Okay. So seeing none, we will turn this over to we will launch into our first.
Chris.
Is doing yeah. So, our first agenda item, planning file number MAJ 24-0003, a final review of the major site plan application for a proposed townhome development consisting of 3 units located at 909 Lake Point Circle, lot 16, block 3, Lake Point at Frisco resub portion L2, applicant Shane Lacey representing Lake Point Townhomes. Okay, take it away.
Thank you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Chris Valdez. I'm a principal planner here at the Town of Frisco. And today we're going to be reviewing the planning file, a proposal for a townhome residential development at 909 Lake Point Circle. And this review focuses on the final site plan review. Why am I not advancing? Okay.
Hold on.
There we go. Okay. So, brief project description and background is what we kind of just went over. It is currently an undeveloped lot and located at 909 Lake Point Circle. It was always slated for future development. This is a project rendering. And then this came before the Planning Commission on October 17th. It was a sketch plan and the commissioners provided comments. Specifically, the one that needed to be addressed per code were the roof pitches, and the applicant has addressed that, and that the commissioners agreed to the tandem parking requirements and that the proposed development fits within the PUD and the code, and that the applicant consider minor changes in materials to assist with a duplication of color. And the commissioners recommend that the applicant speak to the town about potential for a trail connection as requested by public comment. That was not feasible. And then the commissioners encourage the applicant to consider a trail connection. Oops, I guess I did that twice in there. Never mind. All right, so the dwelling units, this is part of stage 6 of the Lake Point PUD, which permits a maximum of 5 dwelling units. 3 dwelling units are being proposed, which is within the limits of the PUD. And continuing on for building coverage, building height, building stories, parking, open space, and snow storage, all standards are being met or exceeded. And continuing with setbacks and proposed setbacks, all setbacks are being met or exceeded. And then we're looking at development standards and compliance. The proposed application is in conformance with all the development standards as outlined in the staff report. If you want me to go into further detail, I can. But really simply, staff has some recommended conditions, and these recommended conditions were outlined in the staff report. The one to note, prior to the issuance of the building permit, the applicant shall submit and receive staff approval of a landscape modification plan showing full compliance with landscape requirements as outlined in the Frisco Town Code. So what happened is that the sizes indicated on the plan are just too small for what are required in the code. So they do have the right number, we just need to get them to the right size. And with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? April?
Any questions for staff?
No questions.
Just one question. You said the trail connection wasn't feasible. Just curious why.
Because of the site coverage, they were concerned that because they are right on their site coverage, you're allowed 25% and they're at 24.9. So putting in a paved path would then impact their site coverage.
What if it was not a paved path, but just like a kind of reserved easement or something? If
To that.
Yeah.
okay.
Quick follow-up on that. If it's less than 3 feet wide, does it not count?
So this is a little tricky. It is exempt from lot coverage, but it's a little different definition being the open space in the PUD than the lot coverage.
Okay.
So yeah, good
Perfect.
question.
Thanks for
Mhm.
clarifying.
Yep.
Candace, any questions for staff? Okay, excellent. Well, then, if nobody else has any questions, I don't have any other questions. We will turn it over to the applicant to step to the podium and let us know what you'd like us to know.
Yeah, do you guys want to see, I brought samples again, do you guys want to see any samples
Uh,
of colors? You guys
They're
saw
the
my
same, right?
sample?
We saw them, we
Same
saw
exact
physical
ones.
samples before. I don't, does anybody else get to see
I'll
those?
go down there.
I don't need to see those.
Make sure. I don't have much to say, really. I think you guys did a great job on the review. I'm definitely here to answer any questions.
Did you say your name?
Oh, sorry, I'm Shane Lacy. I'm the owner, builder, developer, mine. The only thing I think I did notice, Chris, was I'm about 90% sure we did update the landscape plan to meet that code. And I just don't know, because it's that deciduous rule. And I think it's the 50% of the deciduous trees have to have a caliper of 3 inches. And then 50% of them have to have a minimum caliper of 2 inches. And I think we're good then. Is there anything else that I might be missing as far as that goes?
Oh, maybe I was looking at it all.
Okay. So other than that, I mean, we have the waiver from Public Works, the driveway and everything like we talked about. And honestly, the new building department and those guys, Tara and I think it's Jonathan, they've been great to work with, so I'm not gonna have anything too crazy to announce here, so.
Okay.
Just, looking forward to hopefully getting this thing approved and getting it going, so.
So we can strike condition number 3.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant? Candace?
I do not.
I guess the one that I asked staff about the trail.
Yeah, it's just, I don't think it's really all that realistic, especially with that fence line between, it's I forget the townhome development behind Lake Point Circle there. It starts getting really tight along the side property lines and everything, and I don't think it's really all that realistic for something that's gonna be used very rarely, fortunately, so.
Wouldn't you have to cut through somebody else's property too to get to the open space?
Correct, yeah, so. Yeah, I prefer not to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kelsey, questions for applicant?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I don't either. Thank you.
I don't have any other questions either. I think you pretty much handled everything we had to begin with, so thank you.
Great. Well, I guess we'll catch up with Chris.
Yeah.
If we have any.
No, you're not done yet though. We still have public comment
Yeah,
and then they'll make, you can say.
don't run away.
See if we have any public comment. So with that, we will open the floor up to public comment. Anybody online or in the audience who would like to speak, please step to the podium and state your name and address. And if you can, keep your comments to 3 minutes or less into the microphone would be great. And if you can, address the commission and don't get into a conversation with the applicant.
Them, I think.
You could handle that outside of the room if you like.
But you can go ahead and state your comments
Yeah, if you
and
have
questions for the
us, if you
commission.
Say something to us, you can, but if you need a conversation with them, you're welcome to have that anytime you want.
They're not appropriate, you can tell me.
Okay.
My name is Joan Carol Brigham. I live at 901 Lake Point Circle, which is at 901, and then there's 903 and 905, which is Lake Point Village Condominium Association. And I'm kind of like the HOA president and the manager there because nobody else is ever there. So we're directly next door and we the driveway is between us. And so I had 3 questions about current trees and plantings, I guess, that are there. Will they stay? The other question is it going to be compliant to the Colorado rule that a room bigger than 600 square feet has to be solar ready, and they're supposed to be charger ready, so the electricity has to be ready to deal with solar. And I believe that's a Colorado thing.
It is, and it's a Frisco code as well, yeah. So I'm sure they'll be held to the local codes, energy codes. Yeah.
And then the other one was about water. So we were built below grade. It's like it was built in the mid-80s. It was like one of the first buildings to be built on that circle. So we're below grade. So I always have water in my crawl space. And so what I was wondering is, was anything done about looking at the flow of water, and will that building impact me and what gets into my, because I don't even know where that water comes from, but I have a sump pump and blah, blah, blah. But will any of the construction or the concrete or the foundations have any impact on how that water flows?
Well, the project is being reviewed by our town engineer, and he will be looking at all of the water flows. You know, it's difficult to predict under subsurface flows, but you know, we're certainly going to look at surface drainage and make sure that he's not causing any additional surface drainage on your property.
Okay.
He's going to be held to that. But as far as subsurface, that's pretty tough to control. But and I don't know that we necessarily have any codes that we can cling to when it comes to subsurface drainage, but we will be looking at surface drainage for sure.
I noticed on the plans that there are dry wells,
Mhm.
and I was just wondering if that was.
That's a typical feature to contain drainage so that it can seep into his lot instead of running off onto yours. So that's a pretty common technique.
Yeah, that I was like, I wonder if those would be helpful, but
Yeah,
it sounds like
definitely
it
will
would
be.
be.
Yeah.
Okay. And the plantings, were those like the?
You can
Your connection.
address us, or you can,
Or the
you're free to talk
asphalt-
to him outside of it after the meeting. Yes.
On the corner, it's on the southeast corner, like right by my driveway. There's some nice mature aspens. I mean, would they stay?
I don't know from the site plan. Do you
You
guys?
can pull up the landscape plan and check,
Okay.
or if you want to ask the applicant, we're doing that after public.
Yeah, if you know the answer to this
Yeah,
question.
I mean, the goal is to maintain them.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
so I want to try to leave that whole kind of, some of the shrubs along the property line and the aspens up front.
Really? There's
With additional, yeah, I think
There's
so.
a patio that's supposed to go in
There
on
is,
that.
yeah, but with the setbacks, I think we're.
All right. Thank
All right. Okay, thank you so much.
you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Okay,
If you have any other questions, we don't have anything up there. You guys done with me?
well, let's see if there's any other public
Mhm.
comment or any other questions. Yeah, I guess. What time's the game start? Any other questions? Are we seeing anything online? I'm not seeing anybody's hand raised. Anyone else in the audience? Okay, then we'll close the public comment portion of this agenda item and we will start commissioner discussion. I don't know that we need a whole lot of discussion, if any.
I think we're thumbs up.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, we saw this before and we all kind of liked it and
Yeah.
now it meets code and everything, so you could entertain a motion unless you have something. Okay, okay.
Okay.
Anyone care to make a motion?
On the screen.
I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll take the easy one. With respect to file number MAJ 24003, I move that the recommended findings set forth in the November 7th, 2024 staff report be made, and that the recommended conditions set forth therein be taken, and that the Planning Commission hereby approves the request for the major site plan application for an attached townhome development located at 909 Lake Point Circle, Lot 16, Block 3, Lake Point at Frisco Sub A, resub portion L2.
Second.
Second, great. Okay, Kim, do you want to take a vote?
Sure.
Commissioner
Conley? Yes. Commissioner Day?
Yes.
Commissioner Forsyth?
Yes.
Commissioner Steele?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitmer? Yes.
Excellent. Passes. Now you can go. All right, excellent. So with that, we'll move on to our second agenda item tonight. planning file number MAJ-24-0005. A sketch plan review of a major site plan application for residential development consisting of a 19-unit multifamily development located at 200 North 7th Avenue, Lot E2, River Pine subdivision, re-subdivision of Outlot E, replat A, River Pine. Applicant Seth Francis representing Blue River Real Estate Fund 4. Emma?
Nope.
That's
me.
That's back to you, Chris. Okay, okay, thanks. Take it
Alright,
away.
Seth is in the audience if you do have any questions. So today we'll review planning file, which you just said, a proposal for a multifamily residential development. This review focuses on the sketch plan, which is an early design phase, allowing the planning commission to provide feedback before the final major site plan application. As a reminder, there is no vote on a sketch plan. So the project overview, the applicant is proposing a new multifamily condominium development consisting of 19 units over 4 levels. Each unit has 2 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and ranges in size from approximately 1,500 square feet. The lower level has an at-grade parking garage with 38 spaces, 1 for each bedroom and 2 ADA spaces. There's also an additional 4 guest spaces. This level also includes a bike storage facility. There are 2 two-way access points proposed into the property, which provide access to the 4 exterior guest parking spaces and an external bike storage area. Additionally, 1 residential unit is located on this parking level. Levels 2 through 4 are dedicated to residential units. And for the properties located in the mixed-use district, this development should be a mixture of residential and non-residential uses, with each such use making up not less than 20% of the total gross floor area within the property. That is directly from the code. And developments with a lesser mixture of residential or non-residential uses, including single-use developments, are a conditional use. We will not be discussing the conditional use tonight because it hasn't been formally submitted. So we'll discuss that conditional use at the final site plan application. So the property is a 1.96 acre developed site with wetlands and is located between North 7th Avenue and Summit Boulevard. When the River Pines planned unit development was approved, Outlot E was mentioned in the PUD agreement as being reviewed in any future application under the standards of the mixed use zone district. Therefore, the site is being reviewed through the mixed use zone district standards and why there's no mention of the PUD. The properties to the north are part of the PUD, but with an underlying zone district of residential low density. The property to the south is the recreation path, also identified as 7th Avenue Alley, and the property to the west is also part of the PUD and has an underlying zone district of mixed use. And then the property to the east is the right-of-way for Summit Boulevard. So looking at the vision and guiding principles within the community plan right now, the neighborhood is primarily single-family residential, and the property has changed use since its original construction in 1970, changing from a mixed-use development to a modification in 1993, when the town council approved a conditional use application to convert an existing multi-use structure. The old, is it Villains Lair? Okay.
It spelled it wrong in all the old files, so
Okay.
we continue to spell it the way it looks funny.
Yeah. All right. All residential use. The property is located within an area that contains a mix of residential building designs and materials. And the application is a departure from the neighborhood's existing character. Because the surrounding properties are primarily single-family homes. One of the recommendations from staff is that the planning commission should discuss whether the application as proposed is in keeping with Frisco Community Plan's principles, goals, and policies, specifically 1.1A and 2.1C. So with the mixed use development, there are no steep slopes on this property, so therefore it is in compliance with the steep slope standards. Preliminary drainage comments have been provided by the town engineer to the applicant. A full drainage plan and erosion control plan will be reviewed at the final stage of the major site plan application. A lighting plan has not been submitted yet, but we have to make sure that those are night sky compliant with full cutoff fixture standards when it is submitted. For landscaping and vegetation, the application proposes 100 trees exceeding the required 98 trees. but does not include the required 57 shrubs at this time. A full landscaping plan, including shrubs, must be submitted for the final review. 9 trees are required in the front yard and 24 trees are proposed, which is exceeding this requirement. A trash enclosure, including recycling space, is provided and meets the standards for the multifamily development. And then for the residential development standards, the application will be reviewed for compliance with residential design standards to ensure quality development and integration with the surrounding neighborhood at the time of the final review. Overall, the application is progressing well, but requires adjustments and further documentation to comply with landscaping, snow storage, access, and lighting standards. So maximum lot coverage per the code, lot coverage shall not exceed 60% of the total lot area in the MU zone district. The proposed lot coverage is 8,096 square feet or 21.7%. And that includes the building footprint, driveways, decks, and patios. Therefore, the application is meeting this requirement. The maximum building height is 35 feet for a flat roof and 45 feet for a pitched roof. The applicant is proposing a maximum building height of 45 feet. A roof ILC will be required during construction to ensure that the building does not exceed the maximum height. We are going to talk about bulk standards later on in the presentation. And then minimum open space per the code. This district requires 10% of the total gross floor area to be open space. However, no open space number was provided in the application, hence the question mark in the slide. And the snow storage, 1,428 square feet of snow storage is provided, meeting the requirement. And snow removal from the upper decks must be shown to avoid impacting adjacent property at the final review. So this is access and parking. They are proposing tandem parking. The 2 driveways are proposed off North 7th Avenue. The proposed 16-foot width meets the code, but one driveway must be perpendicular to town right-of-way. Right now, it is at an angle, and the town engineer commented on that. So there's a formal approval for access design, which will be required at final review. Non-vehicular access, the application does not show direct pedestrian access to North 7th Avenue, but staff finds the access via the driveway adequate, given the absence of connecting sidewalks. And there are 44 total parking spaces are provided, meeting the required number of 43 spaces, which is 38 for residents, 3 visitor spaces, and 2 ADA spaces. Tandem parking spaces are proposed for some units, which will require confirmation of adequate turning radius at the final plan. And then they need compliance with electric vehicle charging station requirements will be reviewed at the building permit submission. As I stated, 2 ADA compliant parking spaces are provided, meeting the requirements. 38 bicycle parking spaces are proposed, meeting the code requirements. And then the front yard setback, side yard setback, all meet the mixed use zone district standards. And the facade standards. So staff is requesting the planning commission discuss the building design and determine if the units appear to be duplicative and use repetitive patterns. And also per the bulk plan, the applicant sent over new plans this afternoon. This plan does not meet the bulk standards, but there are revised plans that the applicant is going to share with you that show that they can meet it. So we did not change the presentation 2 hours before the meeting. So this is what was submitted in the original application. And then these are the discussion items for the parking tandem layout. They do have to meet 2 of these 4 standards for the planning commission to find that the layout of the parking is functional, and at a minimum, those 2 standards are met. And then these are the discussion items. So staff recommends that the planning commission comment on the proposed landscaping, that you also comment on the duplicative nature of the development in relation to the facade standards outlined in the code, and that you comment on the use of materials, including the application of metal, and that the planning commission comment on the bulk plane encroachments, which the applicant will address, and then also the tandem parking. And with that, I will open it for any comments. Questions, sorry.
Candace, do you have any questions for staff?
The bulk plane. So you're saying they submitted revised plans that do meet
Mhm.
what we are seeing here do not. So that we'll
Correct.
save that for later. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the tandem parking, this is just a good question on code that I should maybe know. We allow tandem parking, but they have to show that vehicles can maneuver in and out. Is that what it is?
Correct. They have to maneuver. They can't be used for like unit 1 and unit 2, for example, can't block each other in.
Okay.
And then there's kind of, and we can pop it back up, but 2 out of the 4 criteria. So basically it's functionality
Okay,
is what we're looking at, or the commission's looking at.
okay.
Yeah.
And then the 3 visitor spaces, what is the code for that?
So, yeah,
I'm sorry, I
go
should
ahead.
know that.
Yeah, go
No,
ahead.
that's okay. And actually, we have some of this that we're diving into at the next presentation also. So good questions. It is 1 space for every 5 units. And so historically, we have looked at it as you don't hit 2 until you hit 10 spaces, then you hit 2 visitor. And so it's not a rounding like pretty much everything else in the code because of the wording that we have in the code.
Okay.
So, and we actually are gonna Emma's got that in her presentation too, to
Okay.
make sure commission kind of agrees with how we've been interpreting that language.
Okay,
Good question.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know it's come up.
Yeah, and that's, we are gonna start bringing more questions to you because there's been a lot of historical interpretations by staff also, and we want the commission to be sure that we're doing it the way you agree with too. So good questions when you ask these. You can always contradict and say, despite that, I think it needs
Okay,
this many.
and some of it is just ignorance for not knowing the code, like.
You're good.
Okay, and then my last question is, I know with one of the adjacent workforce housing, we asked the applicant to do a traffic study. And now like this is kind of on top of that. I'm just wondering if
Yeah, you wanna go ahead? with
staff
that
has
one?
looked at that.
Okay, yes, a traffic study will be required.
Okay.
So we don't require them for sketch plan. It'll be required to be submitted with the full site plan.
Okay,
And I believe, and I'll let the applicant address this during his presentation, I think we also already gave him the comments that came up from Planning Commission for 602 Galena and the additions that were gonna need to be made for that traffic study, so that he could tie that into his traffic study also.
okay,
Yes.
Perfect,
so,
yeah.
Yep,
As
and
long
so
as
you
it's-
definitely will see a traffic study at the next one. And
Okay.
then that gets reviewed by the engineer along with commissioners.
okay.
Yeah.
And then last one related to the road. I think there was like a shifting either right of way lines or the road near that workforce housing. Does that sound familiar?
I think because when they did the on-street parking, is that correct?
Yeah, there's gonna be a little bit of a realignment of that.
When that,
bend.
okay, thank you.
Okay, but that's before this area.
Well, it depends on financing on the town project, but,
Gotcha.
Oh, they might wanna go further.
well, oh, I was just thinking they may be building first,
Oh, right.
so we'll see.
And also I just want to say this was a very good staff report, so thank you for laying it all out and like having us focus on certain things. So, thanks, no,
Awesome. Jessica, any questions? No.
Yeah, so Chris, thank you for the presentation. Just so I kind of repeat back, so I understand this is zoned mixed use. Because there was maybe historically, there was more mixed use in this neighborhood. Now they're coming in with an entirely residential project. So they would need some type of CUP to do entirely residential. We're not reviewing the CUP tonight because that has not been submitted.
Correct.
Okay.
So
So historically, they do. They don't have to, first of all. We can take it in at sketch, and that's what we do try to do. And so, yes, you're 100% accurate. We could have taken in with a sketch. We could have published both of them and done that. Due to just the new staff, and I didn't catch it until I was reviewing the staff report, we hadn't required it. We did as staff decide it's kind of okay because of all the wetlands and the diving into it. Point being, I guess you could just say staff, we didn't take it in.
Okay.
How about that?
Understood. Fair
Quick and,
enough. And I-
quick and easy for you.
Yeah, and I only ask, and this is maybe more of just a comment, is that it does in one way affect how we're viewing the architecture of the building. If you come in with the CUP, that's proposing workforce housing units because you're proposing all residential on this site, we're gonna look at it differently. So I know it's not time for comments, but just it's a little bit disjointed in my mind to see it without sort of, the point of a CUP in a way is like, okay, I'm doing something that doesn't entirely aligned with zoning, and so I need a little ask from the town, and so it's some way it's what is that bargain? What's that deal? But-
Yeah, and just from a
Yeah.
staff perspective, excellent points, and not gonna, totally
Yeah.
agree. And we will work on that in the future. I should
No
have caught
worries.
it. in
It's, yeah,
full.
it's no worries.
So,
Just, I'm
yeah.
just noting that as
Yeah,
it's.
but
part
I
of the
will
whole
say,
sketch
as
commentary.
staff, you will find that staff will be supporting that because of the street that gets into it, the adjacent neighborhood,
Mhm.
and what we think the neighbors would probably be supportive of.
Sure.
So when it comes forward and gets discussed, they will have staff support for the 100%, if that helps at all. Doesn't mean a lot, but.
Thank you. And then, Chris, you have asked us to review this in terms of certain master plan criteria. Will you go over those a little bit
Yeah.
and kind of what those are about?
So, specifically, what I'm gonna do is go back to that slide. So being an inclusive community, and that is double check my notes. I want to make sure I'm quoting the correct. Okay. So 1.1A says ensure new housing complements adjacent properties and neighborhoods through appropriate mass, scale, and design. So then it says see page 68 for area specific policies and design, but that was one I wanted the planning commission to focus on. And then the second one was 2.1C. And that says as development and infill occurs, ensure the town's overall mix of land uses remain aligned with community goals. Do we believe that having this 100% residential in a mixed use zone district is what?
You can comment on that part because it's in the community plan.
Got it. And I guess, yeah, follow-up question for staff, right? Like, yes, it's 100% residential. Can we get into it in the CUP in terms of what type of residential we're looking at?
It's just residential versus commercial.
So we can't get into a conversation about, does workforce housing help to assist that second goal that you just read about? Does this help until, the project should support a balance of housing to boost the local economy and support small business? If, to me, and I don't want to try to make sure I stick to questions, but it is in that context of, if this is a master plan criteria that we're allowed to look at, I would say that we're allowed to look at the mix of residential that's proposed.
Yes, I agree because of the diverse mix of housing.
Great.
Yep. For the conditional use itself, you're really not looking at the mix or you're looking at residential versus commercial. For the project as a whole in connection with the community plan, you can definitely look at what Chris noted and brought up, which is
Okay.
why she noted it for you to discuss.
Great. Thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Kelsey?
So looking at their plans with the two driveways and the engineer commented on it. Is it allowable to have is it against the code to have the two driveways? Cause they were like, why is this driveway here? We don't need this. Do they need the second driveway?
So we'll let the applicant comment on if it's required for Summit fire requirements, because I'm not sure about emergency and their access. As far as our street standards, they are, if the applicant proves a case to the public works director, they can get the waiver for it. And
So
so
the second driveway would need a waiver.
it would need a waiver,
Got it.
correct?
And
then
that waiver could be the EMS services saying,
Yeah.
we need this.
exactly.
Got it.
Yes.
My only question.
Good question.
I had a question around the parking. So is there ADA parking that's required for visitor on the outside of the building?
I don't know.
Either mixed
Used or residential? I wasn't sure.
Question.
Is
for
there
you.
ADA parking that's required for visitor parking?
So, good question. The way the code is, visitor and ADA are not allowed to be counted together. So we can't say, let's just take really easy, there's 10 parking spaces required and they have to provide one ADA and 2 visitor. That ADA has to be separate from the 2 visitor spaces.
Okay, so there's no requirement for the visitor parking to have ADA for this type of building, but can the ADA ones that are inside the garage be used for visitor? Or is that only for residents?
No, because they would be marked. And so legally it would have to follow parking only for an accessible vehicle that had the plates or the tag.
Okay, so is
But if
that
they're-
addressed in the code at all, like when you hit the threshold to get need ADA?
We actually thought we were gonna focus on the next item more. No, you're good, sorry. We have a good discussion coming up on this later also. So, and any feedback on that in understanding the planning commission's viewpoint, Chris can carry back to this applicant on this project. So the code is pretty vague, is the real answer. There's nothing that prohibits what they're proposing.
But in the applicability of, is the tandem parking functional, that could be considered.
Yeah.
Okay. That's my only question for staff right now.
I guess I have a little bit of follow-up on one of Jessica's questions, and we've had this discussion before, but I just kind of want to refresh everybody's thoughts. When we talk about, section 1.1A, ensuring that new housing complements the neighborhood and through appropriate mass, scale, and design. If we don't feel that it does accomplish that, that's not a reason to deny a project ultimately, right?
Because it's in the comp plan,
Right.
correct? Yeah.
So we can comment on that,
Request. that
but we
they take
can't
that
use
into
it as a,
consideration.
we wouldn't have it to deny a project ultimately.
To deny directly based on the comprehensive plan or the comp plan, correct? No. What I would do is I would hope if the planning commission felt very strongly about it, I would hope the applicant would take that into consideration before they came back again.
Okay.
But yeah, no, good clarifying question.
And then I guess the fact that you showed them the Galena traffic report for 602 Galena explains why our traffic report for 602 Galena is in their packet.
I guess so.
So it was attached to the staff engineer comments.
Oh, is that what?
And so
Oh,
that's,
okay.
so I included his letter, his red lines, and then the,
And then our. and
Yeah.
602.
Got it. So Chris
Yeah.
McGinnis, our
Yeah, I was
engineer,
looking at
attached it.
That doesn't. Okay, that's all the questions I have. So at this point, if there is an applicant presentation, we'll turn it over to the applicant, step to the podium, state your name and affiliation with the project, and tell us about your project.
Hello, everyone. My name is Seth Francis. I'm the developer on this project. Good to see everyone again. It's been, I guess I was here in June. So good to see everyone again. I think Chris gave a really good overview of the number of units and the sizes. It is again, another unique lot with some challenges. There's a pond on it. There's a lot of wetlands. It limits the amount of building area. And I didn't want to ask, similarly to my last application, for any significant variances. So the plan is to keep everything within the 25-foot wetland setback. I also have a letter from Campbell Construction saying we have enough buffer around to ensure we could appropriately construct the building. There's a current structure on it that will be torn down. There's also a deck that is currently in that wetland setback that we will remove and return to wetlands. Also on the south side of the property, there's a huge driveway that is no longer in use. We also want to remove that, return that back to nature. And that's also an area where we could get a lot of the trees too. It's just pavement right now. I did submit I wasn't aware there was a conditional use permit form. I did write a letter to you guys. I don't know if you saw it, explaining the reasons why I think it makes sense for it to be all 100% residential. Jessica, you bring up a good point that, it's kind of part of this, the whole process. But the whole neighborhood is residential. There were, I think, this lot and 2 lots across the street when the PUD was originally formed that were multi-use. The 2 lots across the street were given conditional use. I think it makes a lot of sense for it to be all residential in that neighborhood. I don't really think a bar makes sense there for the vibe of the neighborhood, and I don't think the neighbors would like that either. I did want to share, I did have some printouts. Chris was nice enough to actually print these out for me. We did update so when Chris made a note in the staff report that she wanted a calculation for the bulk plane encroachment. When we went back to look at that, we realized our calculations were incorrect, and that we had to remove some sections that were jutting out into the bulk plane that required us to redo the roof. And we were able to just keep a small section on the 7th Avenue that has a very nice architectural feature to it. That is 336 cubic feet, which is below the 350 cubic feet requirement for you to give a variance. So I'm happy to pass these out if that's okay. Yeah.
Somebody like cleared it.
Yeah.
So you'll notice there's just the roof still meets the 45-foot height requirement. All the slopes are above 2 to 12. And then on the 7th Avenue side, which is your west elevation, you'll see a gable that is extruding into that bulk plane. That is, pretty far. 7th Avenue is kind of, well, I would say it's a wide street, and the buildings across the way are pretty far away. So I don't think that bulk plane encroachment is impacting anyone's sun or view or light. So just want to make note of that. I also wanted to make note that I was able to get a hold of the traffic study that was performed around the corner. I did have my civil engineer prepare a memo commenting on that as well. I didn't know if it made sense to go get another traffic study of that same intersection since it was just performed. I thought we'd be able to rely on that. And my civil engineer has commented on that as well. So I tried to produce, just going through the process before, a fuller package this time around, even including like drainage and erosion control and utility plans, which I hadn't done the first time around before. So just wanted to have a more fuller package for everyone to be able to review.
Great. Thank you. Gabriel, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, so regarding the landscaping, was there a reason that you didn't include the shrubs, or is that in work?
That is in work. That was an omission.
Okay.
But we definitely have room throughout the building site to include the shrubs.
Have you considered, I think it'll probably come up, have you considered including any kind of workforce housing in this building?
I have not considered it. It's around 2 acres. It's zoned for around 23 units. The wetlands reduces some of that density. I provided some density zoning. But no, we're just currently proposing 19 non-workforce housing units at this time.
Okay. And kind of jumping around a little bit, is the roof material metal?
So changing the roof now, we're now closer to that 212 pitch. And a lot of roofers do recommend at that pitch for warranty purposes to go to metal. So my thinking is doing a standing seam black metal roof.
And matte finish, not glossy.
Matte. Oh, I love matte.
Okay. Yeah. All right, that's it for me right now.
I do want to make one clarification. The applicant stated that 23 units are on this property. When we look at the developable area of the property, excluding the wetlands, actually 19 units are allowed on the property. Okay, so I just want to make that clarification.
Kelsey, questions for the applicant?
No questions, just comments.
Okay. Jessica?
Yeah, and maybe I'm missing, I'm looking at your parking plan. Just what's the width of those parking spaces?
The parking spaces are the 18.5 by 9.
Okay.
And then the width between in the driveway is 26 feet wide, which should be sufficient for people to easily get out. We're also going to assign the units. So any tandem units you see will be assigned to one particular unit. So there'll be no issues of one unit blocking another unit's parking. And you'll also see there is storage at the end of each of those parking areas too, for people to put their ski gear, bikes. We have a bike room inside that's fairly large, and there's also an outdoor bike area.
There's 4 visitor spaces for the whole building. Okay. I don't think I have any other question. Oh, one other question. You said you would restore the wetlands for the deck that's removed. Is that like through like a wetland consultant that's restored? Is that a plan?
So I am talking to the Army Corps of Engineer. Katie did mention it is a long process, and it definitely is, because I reached out back in, I think April. I've expressed my plan to restore certain wetlands. It seems like they are on board. I'm just still waiting for that letter. But otherwise, yeah, I'm sorry, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. I guess, maybe I didn't think you were are you only disturbing the previous disturbance in the wetlands? Cause I guess I'm confused why
Yes.
and that's why you need the Army Corps permit. You're not disturbing new wetlands, you're just removing an existing improvement. And so because you're removing it, you're thereby disturbing wetlands, but you'll restore it to a wetland condition.
Yes, yeah, I would like to do that, just to improve the overall site. There's just all this pavement on the south side that just seems totally unnecessary and could be more beautiful for the neighborhood.
Okay, yeah, no other questions. I will have comments.
You just did remind me of one thing, which is the double parking, that I forgot to address earlier. So currently there is, not a double driveway. There is a double driveway right now, on site. And there's a nice patch of trees right in the middle, which are like old growth trees, that I think provide something very nice to the frontage of the property. So being able to retain those and having a double driveway would be nice. I think it would be easier for access for the cars coming in, coming out, for the garbage truck. I did talk to Kim McDonald. He is going to require like standing seam and sprinkler systems. So that could also, I haven't specifically talked to him about if this makes it easier for him. But I know he had mentioned that he doesn't really have access all the way around the building. So that could be something that, would interest the fire department.
Candace?
That was my question, so.
Okay, Kelsey, you had a follow-up?
I did on the wetlands. I don't know who this is to, but I've heard that these were man-made wetlands for the lodge when it was like built originally, and that it's not natural wetlands.
I heard that. I can't verify it. I don't know if the applicant has the history of it or not.
I think you're right. So it was a smaller pond originally. And then in 92, 94, when the previous owner bought it and remodeled it, he expanded that pond.
Yeah.
And now there are wetlands everywhere. I don't know from the Army Corps of Engineers if they differentiate whether they're man-made or not.
Yeah.
Because I guess a lot of wetlands would probably be man-made too, like between two houses where water starts flowing and you start building up.
I was curious, like, because some projects you have to reallocate wetlands, and I was like, was this one? How did it come about? Because I've heard rumors over the years that that wasn't always the case, that this was a swampland back there. So I just wanted to see if there was any historical data on that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kelsey. All my questions have been answered, so I think we're set right now, and we're going to go ahead and turn this over to the public. So we're going to open up public comment. I don't think there's anybody in the audience that's here to comment on this agenda item, but if there's anybody online that would like to comment, it looks like Jim has his hand raised. Jim, please state your full name and address for the record, and if you can, keep your comments to under 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Sure. Yes, my name is Jim Kidder, and we are owners. My wife and I are owners at 602 Galena. So we've been involved, I'm sorry, 601 Galena, forgive me. We've been very involved in following along with the 602 Galena project. And with that, my recollection was there's 39 parking spaces with 602, and the whole traffic study with that was completed. Now we're talking about basically doubling the amount of traffic. And I think I heard Seth say that he felt that the traffic study that was done for 602 was sufficient. As I recall in the planning commission meetings that we did with 602 Galena, we determined that we really needed to look at 6th and Main, which is already kind of a difficult intersection to navigate. So I just want to make sure that when we look at traffic, we're looking kind of holistically 602 and 200 North, and it stretches all the way to Main Street, and we're looking at a decent resolution on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I would imagine that a traffic study will be updated to accommodate the new traffic added by this project, and I don't know if we can get them to go all the way to Main Street with this project.
Should actually added a special condition, I believe, to 602 Galena
Mhm.
that required that to go all the way. So that one had to, but the commission can analyze the traffic study submitted for this application
Okay.
when it comes in, and then ensure that it covers enough.
Do traffic studies have to add in hypothetical projects? Because that's two big projects
I'm gonna take.
for this
Dave,
one.
Thank you.
Like a cumulative impact per
I
planned
would think the
project.
traffic study would need to be updated with 19 more units. And so we would want to see something updated with this project specifically in mind. Perfect. Okay. Any other public comment? Looking around online, anybody else want to raise their hand? Okay.
Did you go one more time? There was someone who looked like they might have been connecting. Amy, is it just connecting audio? I guess not. I don't see a hand. so-
Okay. Well, Amy, let us know if you had something to say and we can come back to you once you get your audio connected. But for the most part, I think we will go ahead and close the public comment. Did she get connected? No. Okay, we'll close the public comment portion and we will launch into commissioner comments, remembering we are not voting on this tonight. We are just providing feedback to the applicant on his current application. Candace, do you have any comments?
I guess I think something the applicant mentioned kind of sparked looking at this, that the house just to the north. This feels close to have 45 feet right next to you, when right now it's mostly trees and set back a little bit further. So I don't know. That's just my comment, that I know it's a residential area, but that I feel like that property is going to feel the impact of this. And I think there's some comments in here about snow storage. I think there's buffers between wetlands and snow storage as well, right? So I don't know, that just sounds tricky. I think Chris is making the comments from the engineering perspective, but just something that we should be aware of next time we review.
Jessica?
Yeah, and I think Candace, you bring up like a really good point just about, yes, it's residential, but the compatibility of residential uses next to each other, which I know is something that we're going to talk about tonight. It does seem like when I saw the plan and I was like on that lot, on that little tiny portion, like it does strike you as really dense, especially considering the surrounding neighborhoods. And Chris, I'm sorry, remind me of the master plan. I know it's in the staff report and I have it up here. So it's the master plan.
Yeah.
So I think it was ensure.
That happens to me at work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to see the news.
Yeah, it was 1.1A, so ensure new housing complements adjacent properties and neighborhoods through appropriate mass, scale, and design. So that's what we're talking about. And then the other one was, that you highlighted for us, was as development and infill occurs, ensure that the town's overall mix of land uses remains aligned with community goals. Yeah, I would say that I have questions kind of about both of those. I would feel a little bit better about 2.1C, especially in the context of requesting a conditional use permit. If some of these units are workforce housing, that would make me feel better about meeting that master plan goal. But regardless, this does have some big mass coming up next to it. I know the other commissioners are gonna have some comments to make. One thing, and maybe staff can help me with this, are we supposed to comment on the two driveways? Is that just between engineering? Okay,
No, that's just between engineering and
Okay.
the applicant.
got it. And that is allowed by code or isn't allowed by
It
code?
needs a waiver.
Okay.
from Public Works, which is an administrative.
And why would they grant a waiver or not grant a waiver?
That's a really great question. Basically, the director can grant a waiver to anything in the street standards
Okay.
with the applicant, but it's not strict criteria like we have for a variance.
Okay.
So if the applicant proves it's best for traffic movement, if it's to keep the mature trees, things like that, if it's not going to be detrimental to the adjacent streets and
Okay.
the access, basically, if they find common sense, it's not going to be detrimental and it will work okay for their plowing and street operations.
Okay.
Fire marshal.
Yeah.
Got it. And then this is, we always see parking plans that, may or may not work as well in reality or not. I'll just share my experience. I live at a building at 5th and Granite, really similar design in that the tandem spaces are assigned. Homeowners are constantly parking in the visitor spaces. You can absolutely argue that's a parking management issue. That's our homeowners' fault, but the visitor spaces are not visitor spaces. It is like constantly trying to get people not to park there when I have overnight guests. It is really difficult. And the way I see this is it's going to be the same headache. We don't even have, I'm sure we have what was assigned on a site plan as an ADA space. There's not a single handicap space it's still labeled in my building. And we're constantly parking in the street. So from a livability and usability standpoint, I'll just offer that. And I don't know if I have any other comments at this time.
Okay, we can come back if you do. Kelsey.
I sure wish we could flip the site and put the pond on the other side, but for those single family home. Because I do feel that this is compatible with like a Marina Park scale. That's right there next to it. It's just unfortunate where the wetlands sit on this site, that it's gonna butt up to a very quiet street. And I struggle a little with the compatibility there in the mass of this building. And personally, I feel it's very duplicitous. And I don't think we've talked about what we need to talk about a little bit in sketch plan. I feel a little that it's not fully there and that it came to us a little too early. I thought your staff report was fantastic, Chris, but I feel like as a advisory board to not see the conditional use, not have all the pieces in place makes me kind of feel like I need to see this again. Because I do feel like it's duplicitous and doesn't meet the character in terms of bulkiness. Where when you look at Marina Park, there's some bridgeways, there's some multiple buildings. It's got a lot more fenestration in it that it breaks down some of that huge bulky thing. And that's on a corner. And this is in next to the single family. So I struggle a little bit with the size of where it is. I think 19 units could work in there and it could be a nice thing, but it feels duplicitous and big at this point to me. And I would second that all the parking things we probably approve are problematic. And that should be a code change.
Yeah, so I kind
Yeah.
of echo the comments here. I feel like, first off, I'm happy to see something going on the site because the site's been sitting empty for a long time. So I will say that. It is nice to have some housing come into town. I would like to see workforce housing be included if it's feasible for the developer to be able to do that, and partner with the town on that. The building is very large and it is very repetitive. I love the side of the building that is facing towards the south that faces the wetlands. Beautiful. I love the look of it and everything on the first page of the plan, but when you look at the sides of the buildings, it's very repetitious. And so I'd love to see a creative way to be able to better handle that. And sometimes it's hard to tell from the flat look versus, the texture of the materials being used, but I just wanted to throw that out there as a comment. And I think that's everything I have for right now.
And I agree with the commissioners. I struggle again with that, with the 1.1A. Does this fit the scale of the neighborhood? I don't think it does. I don't really have personally an issue with the mixed use or with the conditional use when it shows up. I think that we probably will have a great conversation when that comes up. But I agree. I think we should be seeing that now. And to not be able to even talk about that right now makes the rest of the discussions stunted. So that, to me, the scale of the project is it's a little out of scale for that neighborhood. There is a lot of repetition going on. Again, I think April was right on the money. It's got a great elevation facing the pond that none of us are ever going to see, or none of the rest of the town's ever going to see. I feel like maybe one of the less exciting elevations is what faces the street. So maybe we could spice that up, make that a little bit, look a little nicer and make it a little bit more in context with the rest of the building. And maybe relieve some of the repetition that we're seeing, especially from that side. But yeah, as far as the scale goes, that's really my biggest issue. I just feel it's out of scale for the neighborhood, and I don't know how we can, we can't start asking them to cut units, but that would be what it would take to get it in scale. Oh, we do have one more person with their hand raised, I'm seeing. Why don't we go ahead and let them?
Do you want to just actually reopen?
Yeah, we're gonna reopen the public comment for just a minute. Barb has her hand raised and we want to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. Go ahead and let Barb, if you want to state your name and address for the record. Looks like you've been unmuted and you have the floor.
Hi, thank you very much. This is Scott Herbig. Barb and I are together. We live at 300 North 7th Avenue, so the house directly next to this property. And want to echo some of the comments in terms of this build does not at all, in our opinion, flow with the rest of the units. It is a quiet cul-de-sac with the Galena new project going up and then this project going up. The traffic, I appreciate you guys looking at the traffic going all the way to the Main Street, because getting out of there on any weekend is difficult. You might be sitting for several minutes. I cannot imagine having another 100 potential people at any given time. Then we'd have to look at, is there a roundabout? Is it a traffic light? There's multiple issues with that. But then also just the aesthetics of building something as large and complex as this with the rest of the neighborhood that is absolutely nothing like this. So question is this final? I understand that this is just a preliminary sketch, but has the town agreed to move forward with a complex such as this? Or is this still in just preliminary discussions?
Well, this is just the sketch plan review. This is the first time we see it. So it's certainly not a final design. This is our opportunity to comment on the design. And so your comments have been heard, and I think you're in agreement with some of the commissioners as well. So
very much so. Thank you, and I appreciate that. And so in terms of, and just to clarify, in terms of the traffic study, I know that the Galena one had to go all the way out to the Main Street. Will this one have to go out as there as well to impact that? I wasn't quite sure whether you guys had said yes, that will have to be included, or know that there'd be a second one on top of this.
We are presuming that the town engineer will require it to go, and our planning staff will pass these comments on to him so that he keeps that in mind on what he's going to require in it.
Awesome. Thank you all very much for your time. I appreciate tonight.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we will reclose the public comment portion unless there are any other hands raised. I don't see them. And we will, I guess is there another one? Oh, Amy got back on. Okay, well, then we'll reopen the public comment. Nope, we have some feedback.
Goodness, can you hear me? I'm so sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, there we go. Thank you,
Okay,
Amy. Can you
sorry
state your
about
name and address for the record, please?
Yeah, we just purchased actually across the street. So 203 North 7th. And I really just want to echo.
And I'm sorry, what's your last name, Amy? What's your full name?
Holdyke.
Thank you.
And
Okay,
so
go
I
ahead.
just simply want to echo what was just said, because I know you're just gathering information at this point, and just looking here at the sketch and everything that's showing up now on my screen. I was having some difficulties before, but yeah, this is massive compared to the quiet little neighborhood that we purchased in. So that was all I really just wanted to state, only because I know you're gathering opinions, and I am happy to see something happening, I guess, there, but this does seem quite massive.
Okay, thanks, Amy. All right, then we'll reclose. Are there any other hands raised before I do this again? Nothing else. Okay. Then we will reclose the public portion of the meeting. I think we kind of got through our comments But
I
we
would
need to-
second you on like the conditional use, like, I don't see this as a place for like a commercial interface. So like the conditional use to me would run congruently with this, but
Mhm.
I think through some design changes, you could bring this fast.
Well, and I think staff will note for the record and for the commission and applicant, whereas in the staff report, we have all of our standards and things like that. We also have all of the intents. And if you look under the residential development standards, the intent of each section is stated, and a lot of those do state compatible with the character, provide a human scale for the neighborhood, things like that. So I do think that the applicant can take in the commissioner's comments, and we can, as staff, dive in a little bit more into the intent behind these standards.
And I just want to add one more comment to echo what some of you have said. Like, I agree, this is very duplicative. And so I think some design changes would be beneficial. And I really think, like you said, Andy, I think towards the road and towards the neighborhood is really where we'll feel the impact of those design changes. And I don't think the duplicity on the wetland side is going to bother too many people. I think the duplicity and the shape on the neighborhood side and the street side is really where that intent and that like neighborhood feel can be
Mhm.
Does
modified.
the site allow for like any L, like to put some of the building onto highway, not like,
It's a pretty narrow,
yeah, I guess not.
I think there was some, like,
wetland.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we've given some comments. I think the one thing that we would want to make sure we would want to check in on, Kelsey did mention the idea of asking them to come back for a second sketch plan, maybe concurrent with a conditional use permit. If there were going to be some architectural changes potentially as well, I think we'd like to see those again in a sketch form. Maybe it's something that we could turn around a little quicker than normal because we're just trying to get kind of almost continuing this meeting in a way. But it would be nice to be able to talk about the conditional use as part of this. I think it's really wrapped up in it. What do you guys feel? Kelsey, you were the one that brought it up. Where do you feel?
I mean, I guess it's gonna depend if there's going to be changes. If not, then it's kind of a waste of people's time.
I'll also.
I think I would leave it to, up to the applicant to be like, I'm getting a lot of push on this, but I mean, if we came and we saw, if you came back and saw something that kind of was more appeasing, and I mean, like, I'm looking at, like the large building next to it also is next to a park and kind of tied into Main Street. So it's just a different character on the other side of that building. And this is just doesn't meet the character of that street, in my opinion.
So the commission can actually require per code the applicant to come back at another sketch plan.
Yeah.
You have the right to say you have to come back due to these comments, or they submit the official and pay for a conditional use application. We bring it forward with a final review, and then you would continue that if you felt like you needed more information at that time. Those are kind of the two options the
Right.
planning commission can consider.
And I think, I kind of agree with Kelsey. We could leave it up to them. I really wish we were talking about the conditional use at this stage of the project. But we'll talk about it at final if that's what they decide to do. And hopefully we approve it at that point, or they spend the reels a little bit. What do you guys think about letting them make that call?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Okay. All right. So then that would probably wrap up our comments on this project. We don't really have anything to add. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and close this agenda item. Hopefully you got some feedback you can take back and work with.
I'll come back.
And you
That makes
can
sense.
talk to staff about kind of clarifying if you have any questions about clarifying anything that we set up here.
Yeah, can I also provide some samples over here?
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so as we move into the final agenda item, this is where I'm going to step down and step out to the next room and turn the reins over to Kelsey.
Anybody need or power farm?
I'm doing okay.
Okay.
Okay, well then I will excuse myself.
Okay. Can I see you?
Does that work? Yeah.
Bill, do you want us to get you after this item for updates? You're gonna be around.
Yeah, it's awesome. But I'll be watching, so I'll probably know when it's time to come back. I'll need to clean up my dinner as well. So.
Good.
We won't throw away that.
Thank you.
This is a public comment. I just wanted to see.
Okay. May just.
Should this stay there?
Unless you read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If not, we can trade.
Okay.
You're good. Oh, no, yeah, 100% confidence. I do in Chris too. Just yell across if you need my help.
Emma, is this you?
Yes, this is me.
Okay, and who's presenting? Is Tim or Suzanne?
Suzanne, I believe.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay, Suzanne.
All right. All right, we're gonna move on to agenda item number 3, if everyone's ready, which is planning file number MAJ 240004, a sketch plan review of the major site plan application for a proposed mixed-use development consisting of 1 commercial unit and 9 residential units located at 20 East Main Street, Lot 9 through 12, Block 2, King Solomon Subdivision Number 2, applicant Andrew Stabile representing 20 East Main LLC, and we will have Suzanne Allen Sabo presenting on behalf of their firm. And I will turn it over to you, Emma, for the staff report.
Great, thanks, Kelsey. So as a reminder, like the last one, this is a sketch plan review. So it's an opportunity to provide feedback to the applicant so they can address any concerns, but no vote will be taken on the project tonight. So the proposed site is 20 East Main Street, which is right across from Town Hall here. It is also across Madison Avenue from the Peak School, which is mixed use district. The subject property and 60 East Main are central core. And then there's also the post office kind of across the intersection of Main and Madison. So existing conditions, there's the existing Frisco Prime restaurant in a log cabin building with the parking lot facing Main Street. They currently have access off of Madison Avenue. The applicant is proposing to keep access on Madison Avenue, but moving it a bit further south, closer to the alleyway. I did want to note that the applicant in their application materials this time were not meeting setbacks, but they have they're aware of that and they have a plan to fix it. And they also did not show snow storage on this plan, but they are going to show that next time as well. And there's not a lot of snow storage required, so they don't anticipate that being an issue. So on the first floor, they're proposing about 3,300 square feet of commercial restaurant space with an understructure parking garage, which will provide all required parking for the project. And then on the second and third floors, they're proposing 9 residential units, including 5 3-bedroom market rate units. And they're proposing to utilize the bonus density section of the Affordable Housing Code to provide an additional 4 2-bedroom units, 2 of which will be market rate and 2 of which will be affordable deed restricted.
Roads okay?
Now, oh,
Sorry.
do we have someone?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks.
Oh, no, she's good.
You're good. Great. So now we're going to move into the specific questions that we had for the Planning Commission in the staff report. I did want to ask if you'd prefer, there's like a slide for each question. Do you want to discuss each thing or should I just do the presentation and then we'll come back to discussion? Okay.
Slide.
Sounds good. So for density, as I mentioned, the applicant is proposing to utilize bonus density. The Planning Commission will need to discuss and make sure that the bonus units and the structure meets the criteria in the code that's in blue on the slide. For step backs, the code states that for the central core district,
the minimum step back for the third and above floors of street facing wall facades as taken from the floor below shall be 10 feet. I'm including this screenshot because as you can see, the facades in the middle of the slide, the second and third floors are in alignment, but the applicant is interpreting step backs to mean 10 feet back from any point on the second floor to the third floor. So for example, the brick second floor to the gray third floor. So we wanted to confirm if Planning Commission sees this as an acceptable interpretation of step backs. The step backs, there's also 2 allowed encroachments of the step back, including railings. The applicant is proposing to utilize brick walls as sort of a railing for the third floor decks, which would be an encroachment into the step back. So we wanted to ask Planning Commission if that's an acceptable encroachment. For parking, we have a number of questions. The first is about use on the ground floor. So the code section does state that for properties between Main Street and Granite Alley, uses accessory to residential uses are prohibited on the ground floor. However, Planning Commission has historically interpreted this to not include parking, given that an uncovered parking lot would be allowed. So we did want to, some of this is about some ambiguity in the code that we wanted to talk about tonight. So some of those questions that came up earlier in the evening as well are going to come up in this presentation. So that's our first parking question for you. And then we had 5 other parking questions that came out of the parking section of the code. They're outlined here, but I'll go through each of them one at a time. First, we wanted to check about the office in Unit 1. There are 3 units that have an office. This one is the only one that staff was concerned may meet the definition of a bedroom, in that there is a full bathroom in close proximity to it. So we'd like the Planning Commission to comment on whether this meets the definition of a bedroom. If so, they would need to provide an additional parking space. Then for visitor parking, the code states that for residential uses, 1 visitor parking space for every 5 units in multifamily and mixed-use developments are required. So Katie brought this one up earlier, that there's 9 units in this building. And so staff is interpreting this to mean that only 1 visitor space is required as opposed to 2, but we wanted to confirm that Planning Commission agrees with that interpretation. This project is also proposing tandem parking. So we'll have a similar conversation about functionality as well as those criteria for tandem parking. In this proposal, 18 of the tandem spaces are proposed to be assigned to a residential unit. Those are the blue numbers. And then 7 spaces are proposed to be unassigned. Staff does not see that the spaces 6 and 7 would be functional, given that those are both required parking, either for a visitor or for one of the 3-bedroom residences. So we'd like Planning Commission to comment on that as well.
Which color, 6 and 7?
Sorry, the red 6 and 7. So red is unassigned and blue is assigned for residences. So 6 and 7 would be unassigned tandem parking is what the applicant's proposing.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
And we'll also give a disclaimer. Staff is happy to give you our thoughts on each of these. If it wasn't clear in the staff report also, that we're not asking you to arbitrarily come up with things. We just want to make sure you agree with how we're interpreting it, because it is a little bit vague before they move forward to the full review. So.
And then similarly, these are the criteria for tandem parking that Planning Commission has to find that the proposal meets 2 out of the 4 criteria. We had a similar question about accessible spaces that also kind of came up earlier. So the code does say that accessible parking shall not count toward required visitor parking. And Planning Commission has also historically not allowed an accessible space to count towards residential parking. And so this will come up depending on the interpretation for tandem parking, that if 6 and 7 aren't functional, then the accessible space would be overlapping with residential parking. So we can explain that more as well if needed. For building materials, the applicant is proposing frosted glass panels on the garage doors. And the code states that Planning Commission has to find the frosted glass compatible with the purpose section of the non-residential development standards. And then typical bulk plane conversation as well. The applicant's proposing 241 cubic feet of bulk plane encroachment. It's all in roof gables or those brick railing elements. So we would like the Planning Commission to comment on whether the bulk plane encroachments provide substantial architectural relief. We did also want to note that the application at the moment is not meeting the development standards for roof ridge lines, but the applicant is aware of that and has a solution to that as well. So we'll see that at the final review. I did also want to note we received one public comment yesterday, which you all have a printed version in front of you. They're outlining these 5 main concerns. You can take that into consideration as well. And that's all. This is just a summary of the questions that we have for Planning Commission.
Thanks, Emma. Very helpful. April, do you have questions for staff?
I do. Let me get organized here. So I don't know if we want to get into this right now, but I'll ask anyway. So I was looking at the side of the building on the west side where eventually Madison will be redeveloped. And then I think if I read it correctly, that the builder will not be doing any of that work. But it is shown in the drawings, so it's nice to see it in the drawings. So what will be there in the interim? Is it just going to be dirt like it is today?
Existing conditions.
And what happens if we delay Granite Street or anything else? Is Madison tied to the Granite Street project? Okay.
We verified that. That's why we're chuckling, because we made sure it was in the plans and that it would be looked at. It seemed to be a little vague. And then that's why we made sure that Chris was aware of that. McGinnis.
So is there any sidewalk requirements to get into the building or get into the restaurant on that side of the building?
They will need for the public entrance to meet accessibility requirements for sidewalk. And we'll let the applicant speak to that if you'd like.
Let's see if I had other stuff. We'll talk about the parking. Oh, does this type of building require any kind of bike parking inside or out?
It will, and they didn't show that at this time, but that's another thing they're aware of to show at final.
And then I don't know whether this is covered in the code and I'm just don't even know what the term means, but does waterproof deck mean that it's automatically removing its own snow, or what does that mean?
Like sealed.
Just sealed, not drained?
You're not sure, we'll let the applicant.
Yeah, I
address.
think we'll let the applicant address that. We did ask, I think the water can go through the deck and drain, but we'll let the applicant speak to that.
Okay, I was confused by that. Okay, that's it for me right now.
Thank you, April. Jessica, questions for staff?
I think I'm just confused, maybe on a few of these questions, I guess. Maybe when we go through it, it would be helpful to get staff's take, I think, on some of them. But I guess just so I understand the uses. So obviously Frisco Prime right now is in the back, proposed to be demolished. And then the first floor would have a commercial unit and then also parking. And so the question on that is if parking is considered an allowed use.
Yes.
Okay. Could you go back to a site plan at some point just to look back at that on how that just fits on the. So the parking is the entire rear of that.
Correct.
Okay.
With the restaurant on the Main Street side.
The commercial unit. And is this probably better for the applicant, but is this a restaurant proposed? Okay, sorry if I missed that.
It's okay.
Okay, I might have other questions as we get to more of the details, but thank you.
Candace?
Is there storage shown in the parking layout? Is storage required, I guess?
It's not in the parking.
It's not required in parking. Okay.
There are storage spaces for the units you can see on the second level floor plan. They're kind of small, but in the hallway.
Yeah, and I agree with Jessica. I think be good to hear your guys' opinion on some of this. I also had other questions as you were going through it, but I forget them now, so. Any other questions? Yeah, I'm good right now.
My questions are, did they look into digging this underground? I mean, like, do we have other examples of where we've allowed parking on the first floor on Main Street?
We do, most of anyone who has existing behind the building, it's obviously at ground level, most are at ground level. Most recently is Prospectors Market, formerly known as Rainbow Court. The planning commission in town approved pull-in parking spaces off of the alley behind that building on the ground street level.
But we denied all other first level residential use on.
Because they weren't allowed by right, by code, correct.
And then I guess, you know, I mean, we have this historic overlay. Was there any consideration to preserving that historic structure in with this application?
So the town wasn't approached.
Encouragement by the
applicant
town to do
talk
so.
about it. We have the surveys that were done. It's hard because we don't have a lot of strict enforcement. This DRC Development Review Committee for this project, I believe might have even been done before Emma was here. No, you were here, but I think it started with other staff. I'd have to look, we'd have to read some old notes, to be honest, to see what if it came.
The historic overlay.
Well, just the historic structure that's there now, did the staff encourage them to look to preserve it or?
It's from the original meeting.
And I guess, I don't know, I would like, as well as Jessica, to understand, like you said, you could explain it. Maybe I'm looking for a little bit more explanation on what you're asking us about the parking, like. It just seems like we have feelings about it, but want to know yours, but I'd like to know your feelings, I guess, would be my question. Can I know them?
I have, and one question around the parking that I forgot to ask was just is it always required anytime there's tandem parking to do kind of a radius? I don't know what you call it, a report or whatever. Yeah,
Alright.
okay, so that's automatically baked in. Yeah.
Yes, it didn't used to be looked at very often, but with our new town engineer, since he started, he's diving into all of those.
And so how does the town feel about those two? You know, unassigned spots and the ADA spot and the visitor count, like how does the town feel?
Do you want to go through, save that for discussion or do it now? You're totally your call how you want to go.
I guess we can tie it into our discussion and we'll turn it over to the applicant and public comment and then come back to this parking thing while we're discussing it. Is any other further questions for staff? All right, we will turn it over to you, Suzanne. Welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to see you guys. Suzanne Allen Sabo with Allengard Architecture. Thanks for looking at our project tonight. I'm super excited about this project. Just architecturally, I think our sketch plan and our preliminary design is just, we knocked it out of the park personally. I just think the materials are great. You know, I mean, sorry guys, but we're spending a lot of money on these materials and it's gonna look amazing, especially with those brick facades that come up and are the railings. I'm just super excited about this project. So just want to share that. So regarding let's see, I'm gonna flip around in here. So regarding the setback issue, that was only, the awning for, the entry element that says Prime Sauce on it and, that has a signage on it right now. So I don't know if we have a view of that entry, the 3D view. But basically it's just a graphic error. That should have stuck out 2.5 feet and for some reason Andy drew it at 5 feet. So sorry, Andy. But anyway, so that's just a graphic issue. That's a non-issue. We'll be changing that. So regarding the step back, can we flip to that last view that we just sent over yesterday, I think? Yeah, is this what you're wanting?
I think it was
It's like a zoomed in view.
There. Yeah.
So our belief on the step back code of the third floor is that if we step back the second, and third floor, that's even relieving the massing further, which is, we think, the intent of that code. The code is that it basically states, you can read it there in your packet, but if I had my glasses on, I could read it to you, but but anyway, it basically states that the third floor should step back 10 feet. Well, what we've done in some locations is step the second and third floor back 10 feet, which actually further reduces that massing and, reduces the density on the site, and gives more relief to the project and to the overall massing of the building. So that's our opinion on that. And that's kind of the way we actually read that. So it says that the third floor should step back from the second. But we kind of read that if you're up at the second floor, you could push back. So I don't know how you guys are going to respond to that, but we feel it's actually nicer than it would be if it just the third floor stepped back. So regarding the brick wall design, this is part of what I think looks fantastic about this project. We've pulled that brick wall up and over some of the second floor windows, and we've utilized it as a railing. And as you could imagine, if you pulled that down, that whole brick wall down 3 feet for the railing, all of a sudden, you hardly have any brick over the windows on the second floor, and the massing just completely changes. The vision of the design is totally radically changed. We think that this looks amazing, and we feel it meets the intent of the code because it is a railing. Regarding including the existing and proposed grading, we certainly will do that. Sorry about that, to not show that. I think worst case scenario is the existing on this site. So we're definitely going to meet it. But sorry, we didn't label our proposed grade on there. So we will get that on there. Regarding the parking, regarding the first item where the code states that, basically there's no parking between Main Street and Granite Alley. I mean, my question is, where else would you park on this site without an elevator for your cars? So I think it's just sort of a weird glitch in the code, in my opinion. But we are bringing the driveway down as much as we can. Obviously, there's not much of a driveway, but we're sloping that down into the garage, and the garage is slightly partially buried on the uphill side. So we are trying to sink that into the ground as much as we possibly can without a car elevator. Regarding the pathway to the street, absolutely, we'll provide that. It crosses the right of way, which is why we didn't draw it originally, but we certainly will show some sort of egress to the street. The office in Unit 1, love to hear your comments on this. There are lots of ways we can address this. It could be that bedroom that's adjacent to the office could become larger. And incorporate that office. We could open that office up even further and have no sidewalls on it, like just have it completely open on the one side. So, I mean, there are options there. So, give us your thoughts on that. Regarding the tandem, I completely agree with you guys. That's completely non-functional on the two spaces that are tandem that aren't owned by the same unit. So we have a couple of options there to solve that problem. One is there is on-street parking that we have shown on our site plan, if we could pull that up, our original site plan. So you can see that in the right-hand image there on the upper left of that, the northwest corner there. We're showing a number of spaces on Madison. And that's an option if you guys were willing to have visitor parking overnight on some of those spaces. If not, we have a few other options that could potentially work. Including changing bedroom counts and doing some different things with our floor plans. So we do have options there, but I fully agree that the tandem parking, the way we have it shown, does not work. So, within those two spaces. So, regarding, let's see, the applicant will show compliance with bicycle parking. So those storage lockers in the hallways are actually bicycle storage per the code. So we just didn't label them. So sorry, we didn't let you know that. But that's sort of what we did at Galena Street, which got approved. So those are mesh. The fire department was cool with them. You can put your skis, your bike in those storage lockers in the hallway. I have to talk with my clients here too, and I'm not sure exactly what they're going to want, but that's how we were trying to meet that intent of the code. And certainly we will have bicycle parking out on patios outside and stuff too. We just didn't show that yet. Snow stack, we're working with staff on that. So I'm not worried about that. And then finally, I think there was the question about the recycling and compost shown. If you look at that space on, I think it's shown there. Is it shown there on that plan? Yeah. There's plenty of room there to have both recycling, equal amounts of recycling and composting and garbage. So I don't think we have an issue there either. So if you have any other questions for me, just let me know. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Suzanne.
Take care.
Candace, do you have any questions for the applicant?
How close is the building to the Beaver Plaza building? Is it?
So we're right up against our setback, which on that side, can we pull up the site plan and look at that? Sure. I don't have my glasses on, so you might have to look at this.
It's
It's a zero, yeah. It is zero. There's not a setback on that side. For the
I don't know if
Main
this is a
Street.
question for you or others, but like, how does that work when two buildings are right next to each other?
It happens all the time in cities all over the world. We would shore the building next door. And I mean, it's very, very common. So. Thank you.
Glasses though. One more question. What is, and again, sorry, I don't know who this is for, but what is the required parking for the commercial space? Is there parking requirements?
No, on Main Street, you are allowed to, there's zero parking required. You can park on the street. So, honestly, that parking on Madison that potentially we would look at doing, would help with parking for the restaurant as well.
Questions for the applicant, Jessica?
Yeah. How many parking spaces does that existing lot fit approximately? Just what exists? I'm just curious what exists on that site.
I'd say it's sort of similar, but there's no tandem, obviously. But if you look at that original, if you look at that, you can see the size of the dirt parking lot. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
It's pretty similar. I mean, slightly smaller currently.
Similar to the proposed residential parking or similar to the additional parking on Madison? When you say similar.
I meant similar to the proposed parking under the building
Okay.
that we're proposing.
Yeah, when the restaurant's full on the side, it's probably like 6 spots. And then in front, we got 10, depending on how people park, 10 to 11.
Are those currently marked for parking only for Frisco Prime on the side there?
No, they're not marked at all. They're just
Is
on the property.
But they're not paved, am I correct?
Yeah, it's dirt.
Yes.
Dirt. So 10 in the lot in front of your restaurant and then 6 on the side. Did I understand that correctly? Ish. Okay. Okay. I don't have any other questions at the moment, but I might have more as we get into some of these details.
I'll come back.
Thank you.
April, questions for the applicant?
Can you explain to me the waterproof deck?
Sure, yeah, of course. So we will have drains on those. There'll be internal drains that are going to take away water from those decks.
As well? or just drains?
Generally we heat them, but that's obviously a cost. And so I have to talk that over with the ownership. So I'm not sure what the answer is to that. Yeah, I mean, I generally spec them as heated because it
So we're
works
not
out better.
expecting residents to shovel over the deck. It should drain on
No.
its own.
No, and we're talking about adding some planters on those decks too, which if shoveling had to happen, that could go into planters. So, but that's something we need to discuss further with staff because we haven't even talked to them about that, so.
I think that's it for me.
Any other questions at this time? My question, looking at this proposed condition, so you say you're gonna put in that sidewalk, and then you have these marked parking spots. That's not in the right of way, and that would be on your property already?
No, that's in the right of way.
Okay, okay.
So it'd be similar to what we proposed originally at 101 West Main, where we're proposing building the parking for the town, and then it would be parking that could be utilized by the building. But in this case, right now, it isn't being utilized, but I think we have a problem with our parking in our garage because of this tandem spot, so.
So you are going to create those spots?
Potentially, if, I mean, so it's a trade-off and these guys behind me have to help make this decision. It's obviously there's a cost associated with building all that parking for the town, but it's also for them and it would benefit them. But what I would propose is if they did build that, we hopefully could move a few, like a visitor parking spot out there. We could have a couple visitor parking spots that are marked as being, you know, overnight. And the rest of them could be for the restaurant or whomever shopping on Main Street. But there are other solutions to this issue of the tandem space. Like we could change how our units are configured. We could have a 4-bedroom instead of a 3-bedroom. And then we could have a 2-bedroom. So that 4-bedroom could get 2 tandem spots, right? 4 parking spaces. So then that would solve our problem too. So there are other ways to solve this problem. But I mean, I have to talk to these guys, so sorry.
It's just because I'm like, yeah, you could certainly solve a lot by adding those. It's a town benefit. There's, you know, a lot happening, but say, you know, not knowing is where I have the problem. Like, is this or is this not what we're?
There's a lot of parking, like I build in every town in Summit County and, you know, it's a lot of parking and part of the reason we need this parking is because we're providing employee housing, right? So I have a restaurant in town, the liquor store in town, park, corporate offices are here in town. And, you know, we need them, you know.
Can you
I-
step to the podium and
Sure.
state your name just for the record?
Shervin Rashidi, 33 Hideaway Court, Dillon, Colorado. I've been a resident of Summit County since 1992. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I just needed it.
Yeah, I should have spoke from the back. Just speaking to the parking, right? There's a lot of parking being provided already. And like Suzanne said, I think we could figure this out together. But let's keep in mind why we're trying to check all the boxes, right? So we're trying to build a amazing building that looks awesome. I think we've done that. One of our investors is Vinny. Vinny is used to own Prime and that is property. The other investors are sitting here. So there's 6 of us that are local to Summit County, 20 years plus, and we want the restaurant, right? We want the restaurant to come back and you know, provide and be closer to the sidewalk and have better access and all those things that are going to happen with this development instead of, I've been going to the Blue Spruce and then Prime for over 30 years. It's an old building. I don't know if it's historic by any means. It's a beautiful building. I love it. We bought it. So we you know, we respect the fact that it's been here for a while, but it's old. And what we like to do with this project is provide all the commercial on that first floor. My office is 610 Main Street. And just last week, or this year, you guys, I think the town built it, right? You built the low-income housing, and now that entire area behind my office is parking. And it's covered parking on that first floor. So it's basically the same thing we're talking about, but we're actually covering it and putting it inside and making it look nice and not be visible from the outside. So I think we're doing, Suzanne and the team are doing a lot of great things to make this design work for all the different boxes that we're trying to check.
Yep, I'm just trying to get clarity is all on which plan you're going with.
Sure.
That's what. we
Sorry to
like
jump
here.
in like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Question, is the property line?
The red. Is the property line the red?
Correct, yes.
The red.
I was confused by that too.
Oh, okay.
The property line is the red. Is that accurate, Emma?
Yeah, there's
A very large easement between the property and Main Street.
Now I see it.
So the gas line, that major gas line that runs through in front of 9097, it turns at Madison, but yet the easement continued. So in front of this building, so there may be some discussions that my clients might be having with you guys about that space in the future, but we didn't want to cloud this application with that discussion, so.
So all the, like the parking improvements that are shown here are not on this property, they're on town.
That's
or they're
correct.
in the-
That's correct, and that's exactly what we did what we've shown so far at 101 West Main is that we are building that parking and for the town as a benefit. So I think this would be a similar kind of thing. It's what we did at 9097 too, like we already built that, so, or I mean 80 West Main, sorry. So anyway, yeah, and that looks awesome. I don't know if you guys have checked that out, but those parking spaces are great. It's really
It
nice.
does look great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant? Well, we thank you both. And we will open it up at this time to public comment for this agenda item. If you are here, I am seeing somebody online. We did receive one public comment. Our commissioners have all gotten this from David Charles. So we have all read that. And if I see you're online as well, so if you are here to make comment, please don't just read your letter. We have read it. I don't see anybody, or are either of you gentlemen here for public comment? No, they're with you. All right. So no public comment in the chambers tonight. If I see David Charles has raised his hand online. David, the floor is yours. If you please will state your name and address and keep your comments to 3 minutes, that would be much appreciated.
My name is David Charles, and I'm here with my wife Joyce. And we occupy the unit number 1 of Beaver Plaza, which is, it looks to be about 6 inches away from the new building. And we have some concerns. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying anything. I don't want to trample on anybody's property rights. And I know they can build this building at a 0 property line, but it is concerning because we don't know what it's going to look like. We have no east elevation of the building, which faces our building, Beaver Plaza. So I know we're very, very close. The maintenance of our building in this 6 or 8 inch space is going to be difficult at best. There needs to be code provisions that make sure that there's no water drained in between the 2 buildings, because the water will deteriorate the surface of our stucco building. And I think that should be provided, probably is provided by code already. So drainage is an issue for us. Fire is an issue. I'm sure there are fire codes that stipulate the number of hours of fire.
Makes sense.
We have a very big concern about parking for the restaurant. And that stems from the fact that during the barbecue days, our parking lot fills up with unauthorized parking. If there is no other parking available for the restaurant, we know that our parking lot will fill. And if it's not the parking lot, it'll be the alley. And if it's the alley, people will be using the sidewalk that is shown on these plans as existing, and the architect courteously said that it is existing to remain, as if they had an opportunity to take it out. But anyway, that sidewalk will be nearly enclosed on the west side of Beaver Plaza, on the east side of the building, by the parking structure wall. So it'll be narrow, and it'll be used a great deal if people park in the alley or in our lot to access Main Street. And we're concerned about that. We're concerned about the privacy. As near as I can tell from those drawings, our west-facing patio on our second floor will be roughly 6 to 10 feet away from one of the east-facing windows of the and patio of the new structure. So I think those are primarily our concerns. I'd like to see that east elevation. I would like to know what the provisions for protecting our privacy and the sidewalk are, and that the building has sufficient parking for the restaurant. I looked at the drawings, and it looked to me like there's somewhere between 20 and 30 tables in that restaurant. And if that's the case, you know, you could have 40, 50 cars parked. And that is a very good restaurant. So I expect it will be very busy, just as Sauce on the Blue is and Venny's. So that's a concern of mine. I see. Have I lost you guys? I don't see you on my
No,
screen.
we're still here.
Okay. So I think that kind of summarizes our concerns. That's basically it.
Well, thank you, David and Joyce. We appreciate your thoughtful comments, and certainly we'll get a picture of that east elevation. It seems as there is one with the applicant. We can try and maybe get it up on a screen or something.
Yeah.
We'll try and get a visual.
He's gonna be really pleased, because the way the stairs come up on that east side.
Can you step to the podium so he can hear you?
The way the stairs come up on that east side, it does create a buffer from the actual building. So it's not like you're gonna be up high and right next to each other like it is down at Bagali's now.
Mhm.
It's it does create a nice
Yeah,
buffer, in my opinion.
Well, Mr. Charles, we can try and have the town send you over. It looks like they got an email from you, so they have your contact information and can get you that rendering. And at this time, I will see if there's any other public comment. Anything else online? I'm seeing no additional public comment, so I'm going to close the public comment portion of this agenda. And we will move on to commissioner discussion. Why don't we start with the town kind of going into a little bit about the parking and their thoughts?
Sounds good. Do you want to go back in your slideshow and we'll start at kind of the first question on there?
Yeah, I think if we do back and forth on each question, that might help.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we could just go through.
I agree.
Okay. Do you want to focus on the parking questions?
We just start at the first one.
Yeah, let's just go start.
So the first question was about bonus density. Bonus units can be approved by the planning commission if the planning commission finds that the additional units, because of the structure's design, height, mass, and scale, do not detract from the character of the vicinity and small mountain town character.
So why don't we, how do you, Candace, let's start. with you. How do you feel about this?
I guess I have a bulk question on this. I know I'm supposed to have the surveys. Are there any other like waivers from the code that they're using with this bonus density or just getting the 2 units? Okay, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful incentive. I think what we need to see is the parking that works on site to know that the density that is proposed works for the building.
I would second that. I love this. You know, it's fairly not utilized as much anymore as we know. So thank you for taking this into consideration. I would echo your comment. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
I
I'm
forgot I
on
was
board
there
as
again.
well, so. Yeah, I'm good with it. I think getting a couple of deed restricted units is a good trade-off. And I think the step backs of the building is gonna like reduce the bulkiness feel, so.
Great. Next question was about step backs, which Suzanne spoke to as well. And whether they're meeting the 10-foot step back.
Why don't we hold these kind of ones and just focus on the parking?
Focus on parking.
And then when we can incorporate kind of like the density, the step backs, the architectural to kind of the end as our comments, but just some clarity on parking. So then we can kind of go through and maybe not do, maybe have you guys explain the parking and then we'll have all the information and do final comments. Does that work for you guys?
I still need to understand the step backs though.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I'm just slow on the step backs.
Go back.
Go back. Okay,
Sorry.
It's confusing, so.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just go through this one by one and you guys explain and then we'll do our comments.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
So step backs, this is the code language is what's on your screen. So the minimum step back for the 3rd and above floors of street facing wall facades as taken from the floor below is 10 feet.
We have always looked at it historically as a point below it. The applicant had a great case when we called out that this was not in compliance because the 3rd floor is not stepped back from the 2nd floor, such as in that area you see in front of you. That the way the code could be interpreted is that it could be the 2nd floor doesn't have to be directly from the point below. And so they're saying part of the 2nd floor is out and therefore they can bump the 2nd and 3rd back 10 feet. So it doesn't have to be just the 3rd floor pushed back every time from a 2nd floor.
I thought it was the entire 3rd floor.
That's how we've interpreted it in the past. And so that was how staff called it out to the applicant and said it wasn't in compliance when we did our initial review. And then based on this language, we do actually think that they have a case and that it is meeting the street facing facade as taken from the floor below, meaning this 2nd floor and part of it is bumped. So staff initially said this did not comply with code. The applicant wanted to make a case, as they also presented, that they feel it is bumped back and that therefore it does meet code.
But it's not bumped back 10 feet. Every.
Correct. You don't have a 3rd floor that is 10 feet.
So what's their case that it is meeting?
10 feet back everywhere except it's 10 feet back from the 1st floor.
So this brick is from the brick to the
Correct.
metal is not 10 feet.
Show that other rendering because it really,
Like an aerial or overhead, something that will help me understand.
Yeah, you get that one that we had up before.
Sorry, we have some creative applicants.
This might be helpful.
in there.
Yes, they're showing that.
You can see that the 3rd floor is stepped back, but in some cases, the 2nd and 3rd levels are pushed back at the 2nd floor elevation. So that's
But those decks is what we're saying above the brick are not 10 feet.
they are. Yeah. Yeah.
So what is the town interpreting that it's not then?
So do you see the gray 2/3 to the right of the screen?
Uh-huh.
That part.
That 3rd floor is not 10 feet back from the 2nd floor directly below it.
The code says as taken from the.
From that garage, yeah.
The code language says as taken from the floor below.
The second, the second floor, the floor below.
More complex and interesting.
So I'm not an architect, so I don't know a lot of these nuances. I believe you came up with a good argument. All I'll say is, so this is a wonderful building. It is a beautiful building. I don't want us to come in and have a not so beautiful building and then be able to apply this code language the same way. And that's, I guess, my only concern. I would just leave this up to staff's interpretation. And if you feel that this is a good interpretation, clarify it in the code. But if we're gonna run into some issue
Everybody
doing this, or somebody that doesn't have as, like, I agree, Suzanne, everything you said about how the building works. It's a beautiful building. So I don't want it to be like, well, the code says on this step back, but if the code does say it, then that is what the code says.
This is also a fairly new code. It should be a little more clear and.
Yeah, we now have really great, and this is a compliment, even though it sounds sarcastic, really great planners who are reading things really well, whereas in the past, people may have skimmed certain things. And so it's a good thing that we're diving into these questions, because in the past, it was like, oh yeah, they're fine. And now it's like, wait, this is actually what it says. How are we interpreting this?
If I could just say one more thing, sorry. This is more expensive. So like my developer could be building that second floor out that 10 feet and gaining all that square footage to sell. But instead we're doing something nicer that looks good. And I think it meets the intent of the code because it's reducing the massing.
All right. Does anybody else have questions on the step back?
No, I just agree with what Jessica said.
Great.
We want,
I mean,
don't
I
want it
would
to be an
argue
exception
that
for everyone.
they've done a lot to bring down the mass.
Mhm.
That this isn't just like a cut of the mill, like this is an architectural feature that I would say if this was in the bulk plane, that it adds architectural, that I'm like saying, is it in the step back? But there are so many step backs. Yes, maybe, but
Yeah, I think we have the answer we need. It's staff, our commission is okay with the interpretation the architect used, and staff is also okay with that interpretation, so.
And I'm guessing you have a similar interpretation for the brick wall encroachments into the step back.
I do personally.
I do as well.
I think that makes it look very nice. And if all of a sudden it's just a railing, it kind of loses the intent of that brick.
Agree. And there's no code requirement to have additional railing on top of the brick.
Mhm.
Okay.
Unless the building code had something that planning's not aware of.
Okay, so then we can move into parking.
God Daisy.
I will start, the
Perfect
staff
for
doesn't
talking.
understand how parking couldn't be on the ground floor for a residential, for a property allowed where we want to encourage upper level residential on our main street and mixed use districts. So we find it very difficult to say no to this. We think it makes perfect sense. So.
That it is on the ground floor.
It is on the
And if you look to the immediate building to the east, they have a parking lot.
And we would think
Open parking lot
differently
immediately.
if it was a residential unit, but the parking, we don't know how else, we think it's poor wording in the code. So,
Yeah, and another thing I'll say that adds to this is because you do have it's enclosed, so it gives you that feel, like it's more of the form, as you're walking as a pedestrian along the street, that you do have a building there, so it's not just like you're walking next to a dirt parking lot or
Yeah.
even a, asphalt parking lot. So for me, it works incorporated with the design.
Correct. Agreed.
And I think we covered this, but there's no requirement for the workers in the restaurant to have parking provided.
There, per code, we cannot require a restaurant to have on-site parking here.
For the workers.
Workers or visitors for it, yeah.
All right. So then we can look at the office for unit 1. Do you want?
Staff does find it meets the definition because A, B, and C are ors, not and. And whereas it seems kind of odd, but it is in close proximity to a bathroom, we do feel like the applicant has some options that they could change their layout to make it not look as much like a bedroom, or they use their extra tandem parking space and use it as a bedroom space.
I think that it goes back to, this is gonna be utilized as a bedroom. Whoever gonna put a barn door up or whatever they need, and it will be a bedroom. So I think it either needs to have parking attached to it or reconfigure the floor plan.
Luckily, you have a creative applicant.
We could reconfigure, but, you know, in this day and age, I truly don't think so. I mean, and again, you know, how much parking do we need? You know, down in Denver, they just built a 250 room hotel on Colfax with no parking. So I get the parking and
I'm gonna
so
have to
forth.
stop you though we can't go back and forth. I know we've been a little loose about it, but this is just for our discussion or we'll be here till 10. Not to cut you off, but we just have to stay to protocol here. What are your thoughts on this bedroom?
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Or
I think somebody's
space,
probably
sorry.
gonna throw a bed in there or whatever. I mean, it could be just a reconfiguration, like reduce the walls back so it's more open. I'm sure there's a creative way to handle it.
Okay, so I have like, this is maybe nuanced. But what you've highlighted, you're saying this is a bedroom because there's a partial bathroom in close proximity?
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that being the definition because there's a bathroom close to most things.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a poorly written definition, I would say.
I feel like you're gonna see a lot of upcoming code changes. Lisa.
Good
Not
job.
to affect these projects because they've already submitted, but we're finding so much that doesn't make a lot of sense that has been ignored in the past.
Because I feel like we always say it's gotta be egress or a closet.
And so our
Closet.
planning definition doesn't match the building code.
Okay.
So what would be ideal would be for us to change our land use reg to meet a building code bedroom definition.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I'm okay with it because I feel like those types of spaces have a lot of value and like shifting a wall may or may not change parking, but I'm okay with it as is. I defer, that's not a strong opinion.
On to the next parking.
Visitor parking. So the top is the code section that says for residential uses in central core, 1 visitor parking space for every 5 units in multifamily and mixed use developments is required. So staff is interpreting this to mean that 1 visitor space is required for 9 residential units. And then if they had 10 residential units, 2 spaces would be required, but it's not, the second space isn't triggered until you hit that 10 unit threshold.
I interpreted it the opposite way, but I think it's just because I feel like that's so small.
I think for practical purposes, it should be interpreted the way that Candace, interprets it, but me reading the code, I interpret it in the, that you would need 5. So I would leave that up to staff at your discretion, and I would support a code amendment to go with that interpretation.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's the way I read it as well, is that you wouldn't hit 2 until you get to 10 units, right? So if we want to change that, then we need to
Yeah, I
adjust the
think the
code.
code has to say
Yeah.
it for us to mandate it.
And we agree. That's just, we just want, it's because we have in the definitions and numerical values are rounded. This, in the past, some planners have rounded this. And then it's like, well, it shouldn't be rounded.
I can see the logic of rounding in that favor. I can see both, but it should be in the code.
Kind of like
So, okay, so that's great. And it works for the applicant and staff to understand that. So perfect.
Tandem parking, it sounds like the applicant has acknowledged that spaces 6 and 7 wouldn't be functional as unassigned parking spaces for visitor or, some combination of visitor and residential parking.
April, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would really like to see, I don't think this design works. And we talked about the on-street parking and having to work with the town to have overnight parking. And I think it's a benefit and a win-win for both. And I think we're seeing that all over town now. And I really don't want the side of the building to just be dirt. And so it would be nice to kind of have the additional parking on the side and come to some kind of agreement to allow for either visitor parking or assigned parking.
I would like to see the developer create that parking on the side of the restaurant. I think that should just be a benefit for the town to have, and for the restaurant. I think all residential parking should be contained within the building.
Candace? I echo what you all have said. I don't feel like you can say the accessible parking is visitor parking. Yeah. I think that was one of the other questions. I think those have to be two separate. but-
I would agree. This is not feasible. The ADA needs to be ADA. That is far too long and missed in our code is ADA compliance. It's already hard enough to be here if you have any disabilities in the winter. And I'm confident you guys can figure your parking out. They need to be assigned if they're tandem to work, and we know that. And if you did the improvements, that's gonna improve your business, but it's certainly up to you and your budgeting.
Would you like, so the planning commission has to find that the tandem parking layout meets at least two of the following 4 criteria. We could discuss that now, or maybe.
Candace?
Well, no, it's very difficult for an applicant to not meet this, so I don't know how much you need to discuss it.
We're gonna see a revised parking plan at the next stage, so. I'm okay
Yeah,
with
I think
moving
this
along.
is mute point, like, yeah, this is clearly gonna be tandem. I think it works, you're enclosed. And to comment on the public comment, it's like, yeah, you need better enforcement on your parking lot, but I agree that when you build without parking, even cities have more robust transportation than we do. But if you have a parking problem and it impedes on your neighbor, that's a civil problem, but let's be good neighbors. And parking is a necessity here.
Yeah, and I'll just add that we aren't Denver, like we don't have overnight parking on the streets, like we don't have those things, so we do need developments to provide their own parking.
And then this question came up because if 6 and 7, if the unassigned 6 and 7 spaces aren't seen as separate, then the 1 through 5 that are marked in red would all be required parking for residential. And the accessible space would be overlapping with a residential required space. Does that make sense?
Like 6 has to be a visitor space.
Yeah, so if 6 was the visitor space, they're required 5 of the unassigned for residential requirements. And the accessible space would be one of those 5.
So a residential unit would basically have priority to an ADA space, which from a common sense standpoint, we've never allowed. We can't find anything in our code that actually, we have the visitor cannot be ADA, but it actually doesn't say a residential space cannot be an ADA space. So from a practicality, staff really finds some concerns, and we would hope that, I think the applicant would understand too, that you don't want to take up one space for one unit if somebody else moves into another unit or rents it and needs.
I think you have a legal concern even doing that.
Yeah, I think that you need the ADA to be outright and you need a visitor spot. I think that this
then
needs
you
to
need
be
to-
reconfigured, and if there is a concession that the town says, yeah, you can approve this right away and 3 of those are yours and you can mark them. And then there you get an improved right away. I think there's something here that can be figured out between the applicant and the town. But I would mandate that there be an ADA parking spot and a visitor parking spot.
And
That is-
resident, not, the ADA cannot be a residential assigned space.
Any other thoughts? I think it gives a case for that on-street parking for the town to work with the applicant.
Building materials. So the applicant is proposing frosted glass panels on the garage doors. And the code says that opaque glass can be approved when demonstrated by the applicant to be compatible with the purpose of the section, which is the italic text on your screen.
Jessica, your thoughts?
Rereading this.
Candace?
I'm okay with it.
April?
Yeah, I think it fits with the design of the building. And so what is the concern with, is it there's the frosted glass?
Durability or?
Yeah.
Light? Yeah, what is the concern?
We just didn't know because it's a little different. So,
Okay, just never been, it hasn't typically been used.
and it's not typical what we see. Staff doesn't have any concerns with it. We just wanted to make sure you're okay because it's different and it's not mirrored. If it was mirrored, we wouldn't allow it.
Your thoughts, Jessica?
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Yeah, I think it works in with the materials and it's probably not a cheap door, so hopefully it will last.
And then the bulk plane encroachments were the last item, whether the bulk plane encroachments provide substantial architectural relief.
Yeah, I'm usually sort of pretty skeptical on the bulk plane encroachments. I feel like you have a box to develop in, but I do really think that you've added some nice architectural features to this building, so I don't have a concern with them.
I agree. Thank you.
I agree as well.
Same. I think it's kind of like the brick facade. It's, if you tighten those up, you kind of lose the beauty of this. Is that the final one? All right, do you have final thoughts, Candace, that you'd like to share with the applicant?
While you pull that up, I think from what we've heard tonight, our planning staff will work with Public Works and the applicant if they want to discuss the parking in the right of way and try to see if we can come up with something. We don't have anything that technically allows it right now because those other projects were the affordable housing incentive projects. But recognizing the positivity of it and the addressing the public concerns also, we're happy to sit down with the applicant and Public Works and discuss further if you want to. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would just encourage that from the planning commission, because I feel like the town, otherwise, like, this is the opportunity to address that piece of land as the town. So I think that that's important. One other question, not type of questions, I know, I'm sorry, but where, is there trash on site, or did we talk about that?
Yeah, they have it identified in there.
Okay, cool. No, I guess my final comment is I think it's beautiful. I think it addresses a lot of like diversity of housing and workforce housing and mixed use in the commercial core that we've been talking about a lot. So I think it checks a lot of those boxes that have come up in our comprehensive planning and some of the goals. So I think it's a good project.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've gotten the tone from us. It's great to see this building moved up to activate that sidewalk. I think the building looks great. It'd be amazing if you could take that beautiful bar that's in there and repurpose it. I don't know if that's on the agenda, but that'd be cool.
Yeah, we're looking at all that.
They mentioned that to us too, so we threw it out to Rose at the historic park, whose eyes went wide.
Black Hawk. So, we had someone that might want it back.
Some dibs.
It's already, the session is 9 times.
Yeah. I just in the future, like as we're seeing plans that maybe show an improvement that isn't something that the developers guaranteeing that they're going to do, let us know. I do think that the developer's going to want to build this parking adjacent to their building, whether there is necessarily a deal for it to be one of the residential units or not. I think they're going to want to build this. So I just encourage the town to think about that during the negotiations. But yeah, thank you. And thank you for taking advantage of the code provision for the bonus housing. As Kelsey noted, we have that. We don't see that as much as we would like to. So thank you. We'll be excited to see it the next stage.
Yeah, I'll echo their comments. It's a beautiful building. I'm happy that you guys are including workforce housing or deed restricted housing and getting it closer to the street for sure. I love the old building and I've been going there for years and years and years, but that parking lot, I'm so tired of looking at it. So it's really good to have that building come closer to Main Street.
Thank you. I would echo my fellow commissioners. I mean, I hate to see old things torn down, but it's a log building that's probably dilapidated and rotted. And so I get it. I get it. If we could save the bar, that would be so cool. Suzanne, you're right. This is a beautiful building and he did a good job. I really think that it's going to activate a lot on that corner. It's hard to see towns shift and change, but when we have good developments that bring in workforce, I think we can, hammer out these final details on parking and really make this a great project. And then to echo your neighbors' sentiments, being good neighbors creates good businesses. And, I hope that, you'll take into consideration when you're building that their building is going to be right there. And there's codes to protect that and drainage and everything. And so we look forward to seeing you at the next step and have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.
And Andy, you can return now. All right, we will close this agenda item and move on to staff and commissioner updates.
Your turn. I just want to say thank you for letting us dig into some of these questions, because it is really good. Chris and Emma are bringing up things that at first I dismiss, and then they kind of look at me and I'm like, you're right, the code does actually say that. Like, so thank you for letting us kind of show you things, especially as they're being looked at the same or different than the past. So you don't think our staff is missing something either.
Thank you guys for looking at them. It's like, this feels incomplete without the, conditional use, because we've never seen them without it. I mean, like, I wouldn't argue there that was commercial, but it's just like sometimes you're like, why is this in front of us? Yeah. And I know that's not your fault.
I was gonna say,
it's
sometimes we can't do it.
Yeah.
So.
But happy to dig into any of those items. I love it. So thank you.
Nice to know you guys feel about it.
Emma got put, this was her first presentation at Planning Commission ever. So we put her on the spot with a good discussion item.
Look like that was a solid one.
Bro.
Especially it's Andy's,
I know, we find some vagaries in the code sometimes in our projects. And I think it's good to bring some of those things up to get talked about.
I know when I look at him, I'm like, Andy's behind it. Let's fine tooth comb this.
Yeah. No, that's what we want. That's what we want.
And it raises good potential changes for the future.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I think if you can get some clarity.
Emma has a list.
Also, like, the step back is like, we just wrote that in my tenure here, so
We
it's.
won't talk about it right now.
No, but in
yeah,
general,
in
just
general.
the code itself,
Yes.
not to this particular thing, like, it needs to be clarifying that if there are elements that go from more than one story, how do we address that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the staff, we knew why it was changed in the intent, and we always interpreted it for the intent, not necessarily what the language is.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
where I felt like intent can be met, but it's like you still need clarity in the code
Yes.
to say how it's being met, just like we do with bulk plan, like, this is what is acceptable in the bulk plan, this is the amount that's allowable, like, I think these new regulations just need to be more
Tested.
robust.
Yes, we agree as staff.
Yeah.
And
clearer from our side too. would be
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
everybody's in favor.
excellent. All right, staff updates. We are going to cancel the November 21st meeting. So the next planning commission, we were waiting to see if anything here was going to get continued. Since the conditional use still needs to get submitted and processed, it won't be in 2 weeks. Like, we already missed our public notice period. So you get November 21st, right before Thanksgiving off. We are going to have definitely a meeting on December 5th. We have a comprehensive plan update for you on December 5th, normal planning commission meeting date. And we will try to see if we can get that conditional use and sketch plan back to you, assuming it gets submitted soon. I'm sorry, did I mix it up?
I have it in my notes as the 10th, some comprehensive plan. No, okay.
That's council.
That's council.
And
You'll be there
then,
too.
No, we will actually not.
Oh, no, never mind.
Here on the 10th.
yep, that was the next one.
Yeah.
Joint work session regarding the comprehensive plan will not be held on December 10th.
Oh, that's the one so we get to.
Yep, you get December 10th off now on that one. We had originally planned to show you
70%.
70% document. It's running a little bit behind, which for good cause. So we don't want to give you something and waste your time.
Rather have it take longer and be a better document.
Yes, so, yep.
If may I add something? We decided to extend the public comment period, not public comment, the engagement period. And so we extended it 2 extra weeks because at the time we didn't have very many survey results. And we actually got like an additional 300 by extending it that 2 weeks. So that's why we're kind of pushing everything back.
That was your big push. It worked.
It worked.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It was a
Standing
lot.
outside of Walmart, handing out cards. Yes.
Tried to say it.
Girl Scouts with you.
I know. People were like.
We should time it next time with.
Yes.
Oh,
No. Great. And then the next update for you is the comprehensive plan. We just wanted to let you know, we actually have a 50% plan that was given to us this week. Obviously based on the notes, it's not ready to come to you because we have a lot of edits and comments. We as staff, just so you know, our update, this has a lot of the initial strategies. We're diving in as staff and we're meeting with Chris and myself are meeting with all the different directors such as Public Works Director, Water, Recreation to go through each goal that actually pertains to them. And so what this hasn't been done in the past, and so this way everyone knows and can offer insight. Are we missing things? Is this not feasible? So we're also getting those meetings internally going on for 2 weeks, and then we're gonna really have it edited, and then you'll be starting to see it again after that. So just a heads up on where that is at. Chris is taking all of this. This is her lead. I'm just talking.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Is the housing plan folded under that, or is that like separate than check?
Good question. So next update. The housing
segue.
strategic plan was adopted on October 22nd by town council. What we did, James and Chris went through it. They picked in the housing plan the really short-term items such as code amendments, and we're putting those specifically in here. And then we're also referencing the housing plan. So it's kind of underneath it. And it's also really important things we know we're going to move forward with in the next few years. We're actually making those goals and
Okay.
priorities.
Is that-
Yeah.
That plan up on the site somewhere, I'm assuming?
The draft from town council is on the 22nd. We, by around Thanksgiving is our deadline. There are spelling errors and things in there that we have asked them if we've given them a list. So you'll see a final version, but the one attached is basically what it is. We also, just in case any of you have heard this, we're adding a good disclaimer in the beginning because it's not clear for future staff that we're not taking property rights away. We're not, just because their property was identified, such as a tier 3, we're probably never gonna even look at it, but we had some feedback from the public that, hey, wait a minute, my property shouldn't be in, I don't want my property in this plan. So adding some disclaimers also.
Okay, I was gonna ask that, and I don't know if this is the right venue, but like, there's a GIS map with specific parcels. And a lot of people have very specific concerns, not only on
Correct.
tier 3, but also on tier 1.
Yes,
So
and
like,
we
what is the
understand that.
response to?
Yes, so James wrote a good statement he read out loud at the beginning before it was adopted.
Okay.
And then we're basically inserting that as like an introduction to it. And it is saying very clearly, we are not identifying these to take away property rights. If any, we're also gonna have a letter we're gonna send to everybody to be like, if you want us to consider talking about your property, come see us.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Like,
don't
I
have
think
the
it's
money or, we don't have the, so tier 1, the town owns, I believe. Tier 2 is vacant parcels that are privately owned, but that would be a good opportunity for more housing on them. And so we would need to work with the owner to see if they wanted to work as a public-private partnership with us to potentially put housing on that lot. We don't have the budget for any of that right now either. So
Okay,
that's really the good safeguard for people too. They can come to us and say, hey, you noted my property and I want to work.
Gotcha.
That's the advantage.
So if somebody wants to work with you, they can come, but
It
if somebody
helps.
does not want to work with you.
Then that's gonna be fine.
Okay.
Yes.
What's tier 3? Just like, we would love.
We're taking your property.
It's ours. No, it's less and less desirable.
Yeah.
And I probably, I could have to pull it up to remember. James has that down and I can't keep track. But tier 1 is that we own, each tier is further and further down the line.
Can you send us like the
Mhm.
draft just for us to see?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we'll send you the link so you see exactly what council saw.
Speaking of like seeing things that are going on, like I constantly am looking at like applications in process on your site. I really think you should also include administrative level applications that are in process. Like you're driving around, you're like, this house is being built or this is being built. I'm like, I feel like anything that's in the planning department should be in the
Yeah.
applications
Start
and
adding to the
process.
Ninja table, just a brief list of admin and minor applications. We can work on that. And then what that would mean would be like maybe once every 2 weeks, we sit down and update it. So we don't update it each time.
Yeah, just
But
for like
we can do like a
transparency
bi-weekly review, yeah.
purposes, and it's like, I don't, like, I get calls, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and then I drive by, I'm like, oh yeah, there's else going there, but it's administrative, but I feel like in the spirit of people getting information, it's like, oh yeah, just go check out that page, you can see what's going on.
That's great feedback. Because we are also asked today to be rewriting all of our web pages. So I don't know how we're gonna find time, but we will be doing that. And this, so we also will make things more easy to find, and then we'll add some tips.
In your 39 hours a day. Got it.
Not a day, yeah. It feels what it feels like.
You have your hours.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Go
You're
ahead.
good.
I was just asking a related question about kind of the housing strategic plan, and I know it was really looking at how do we develop these properties Was there any talk of tightening up the short-term rental regulations as part of this? Did that come out?
So short-term rentals are not as big of a topic right now. What's going to be bigger is vacancy tax. And what we're doing is we're following the state legislature right now to see if it goes into effect where municipalities could move forward with a vacancy tax. And so that actually addresses some of the concerns that Planning Commission brings up about, in a way, you could say we have enough units, but they sit empty, right? And so a tax on if they're not being utilized. STRs have kind of fallen off the radar as far as complaints and concerns, to be honest. And maybe people hear about them and we don't as much. Our wait list is huge right now. It's months to get an STR. Like,
The only thing I'll add to that is the only way you can talk about short-term rentals when you're creating the regulations is you use a percentage. So you say, okay, what sounds right? 20%, is it 25%? So when Frisco said 25%, that's a number that keeps growing. To me, it's a really minor change to the regulations to say, when we adopted these regulations, the only way we can talk about is 25%. So we didn't say however number of units it is. I really just think we need a hard cap on the number of short-term rentals. We don't need, it's fine. Just leave it what it was when the regulations were adopted, but we don't need to take the time every year to go and reanalyze and then add more short-term rentals to the list.
1 to 3 a year. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not much.
Still,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
margin. When you're talking about housing and preserving housing stock, things on the margin do matter because it's minor. I know it's like hard to touch, but I don't know. 25% to me is too high, but if anything, at least just cap it. Don't let it grow as we're adding density to Frisco.
Well, and I don't think it's a bad thing for us to put in the comp plan under the housing policies to reevaluate the cap on every few years. I think that's totally justified.
I think, cause like, you said you've been adding 1 to 3 per year, but like.
This year, we're gonna have a lot more, just to be clear, it's when they're CO'd. And so we had a lot of projects in town that started last year and they have not received CO. So last year it looked like we would have added a lot, but based on the structures that are also demolished, we take out what we lost and we add what we added and do the math. And so I say 1 to 3 because that was what we did last year. It will be a lot more this year if all these projects start getting COs.
Yeah, and it's why?
I think it's worth, like, we're 2 years into regulations that are different in each municipality. So as part of this housing plan, like, how did Frisco's look? How did our neighbors look? And like, our occupancy is down 30%. So like, I don't, like, how does that factor into all of it?
We're building housing and losing residents, like
Yeah, and
so
that
why
might
are
be
we
the
allowing? Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
we'll make sure if it's not specifically in the housing plan, we can make sure it's
Is an
reevaluated.
occupancy tax something that has to go on a ballot?
So we would first need to see how it goes in state legislature. And then if it does get supported, I think it is a ballot because it's a tax.
Because doesn't everything tax up to ballot measure?
State legislature. So yes, even though we're talking about it, it's still, lots of, who knows?
I was
Anyways.
just curious on
One
that.
or two towns have actually tried it, Trusted View, and maybe they got a lawsuit about it. Don't quote me on that. I think people are really just kind of trying to keep an eye right now on seeing if it even becomes more legal by the state before they try to push. And it doesn't mean our town is going to support it. It just, that is on everybody's radar as an option that is probably going to be discussed if it becomes legal in Colorado. It has not been discussed by council, so I don't want to mislead anybody that that's what the town wants. So, yeah. Next update is congrats to Emma, who got our 70 hours of free mentorship to receive technical assistance toward Dark Sky certification. I know. So we will be moving forward towards Dark Sky certification. And with that, we basically get 70 free hours from a assigned mentor that we get assigned through this grant program. And we don't contribute any money, just staff time to assist. So that will bring forward code amendments to discuss and other options. And so you got it. Yep. So wanted to keep it. We have a lot that already is actually in line with it.
Okay.
I think I will be honest, the biggest topics you're gonna hear about and discuss are gonna be seasonal lighting. And that might be the biggest one. And timers.
Seasonal lighting in dark skies?
They recommend it for a limited amount of the year. So not 12 months.
Start Christmas at Christmas.
How about it? I'm pro lighting, but I also believe lights bring
Yeah.
brightness, but only when there's.
So again, discussion point coming up. We won't get into that one tonight, but wanted to let you know, you will definitely be seeing things. Do you remember when we have to use that? I think it's in April? We have to,
Ours, we have 6 months. I think it starts December 1st. Yeah.
so we'll be moving kind of fast, relatively speaking, on that one. And next update is we are working as staff to figure out, okay, I guess this is a question for you, for commission. This happened 2 times with tonight, 2 applications tonight. We received items after you had the staff report. It's been sent out to the public online, and then we get revisions. A lot of communities will not look at those revisions because it's not in the staff report or submitted at a time. So that's where we don't put them on the PowerPoint and throw you for a loop, but we also want you to see them because the applicant is addressing problems we don't need to discuss at the meeting. So we're curious how you feel about getting these revisions in, or should we be telling applicants, if you give it to us after that staff report is published 6 days before the meeting, we're not, you out of luck. And Andy may have good feedback.
Well, it would really hamper people on the other side of the podium to say, well, we understand that you fixed all this, but we're not going to look at it.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't, I don't know what that serves. I get the issues that it causes, but somehow I think we need to let people, like tonight, one of the final project had some additional renderings. That's all they were, just to kind of give people better understanding and context. I think revisions are different than added context, maybe.
It's
And
like a code change thing that we ran into in the first project, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Those are kind of different.
yeah, those are more changes, and I think we need to see the way it was submitted, obviously, because that's what the staff report was based on. But to me, I'd want to see if somebody has a new image to show me that's going to help the conversation.
Yeah, I have more issue
It
with
speeds things up.
incomplete applications. That
Which
we
is
say.
hard for sketch plan, and I know we've gone through this, but yeah.
Yeah, we want to see your materials. Yeah, like I struggle more with that than.
Nobody looked at our materials. Anybody look at the materials for prime sauce on your way out?
We're not talking, but
Really nicely presented.
You should talk to your team there.
I know.
So moving on from the specific items, does planning commission agree that you're okay with the recognition that there's staff, we don't know these are coming and they're giving us and we kind of like, shoot, what do we do with this? Are you okay if we're at the meeting and we're saying this just came in?
I think the way you guys are doing it works well, because you
Okay.
have to acknowledge it for people online and the public, but I agree with April, like, there's no point in having the conversation when you have other information like right
Yes.
here. in
Okay,
urgency.
good.
Especially when it's a technical matter that I don't even really like feel like you need me to review anyways. Like, okay, great, now it meets the height or now it meets the setbacks or it's no storage, like just note it, we have it. And kind of echo what Andy said. But I don't, whatever you guys need to do to put the hard line though to protect your sanity, I support that as well.
Worst case scenario, we give you printouts like we did tonight.
Yeah.
And then we'll post that online so the public can still review them. So, okay, thank you. I'm almost done, I promise. I just to give you a heads up, I'm gonna have a talk with our attorney about digging into a conditional use for residential and what kind of we can dig and compromise on. That's a little bit outside of my knowledge and expertise, so we will come more prepared in future applications about a conditional use to know if there's compromising that's allowed or how we look at that as a staffing.
Would master plan compliance come in with this, with that conditional use?
I added a note to ask that and also the intent on the residential, but yes, so that won't fall off of our radar, because I do think that's a good question of what we can dig into and what we cannot legally. So we will look at that. And then the only other update is at council this coming Tuesday. Sorry, you get so many updates when we only meet once every month. This is an interesting one. The town staff received a letter from the public who requested a code change. Staff thought it kind of made sense we would bring it forward to council. We started to look at the code change to write a staff report and realized it was actually proposed 2 years ago by a former housing director here. And the planning commission didn't support it. And then the council went, so I'll tell you what it is here in a second. So then staff got a little stuck because I said, I'm not initiating a code amendment that wasn't supported 2 years ago by planning commission or town council. So it was requested per the town manager's office that we give this letter to the council with a staff report and let them say if they want to do a code amendment, tell staff or they want to initiate it. So a little bit of background so you understand how this came and why it's at the meeting, because also some people could say, well, it's one letter, it does make sense, things have changed, like we just decided we should propose it. So what it is in the code right now, if you're using bonus density, you have to have an AMI cap on your affordable housing units. The proposal 2 years ago and now again is to allow a live work deed restriction in place of a income capped unit.
On a bonus density?
When you say live work, do you mean a remote worker?
They have to work 30 hours, serve Summit County, but there's no income cap, so they can make whatever they want. It's basically our housing helps covenant. And so instead of saying, oh, this project is utilizing bonus density and we're getting capped, an AMI that's capped, it would be an unlimited AMI with just an employment, basically. So I see your nods and I will let you know, I talked to Lena and Lena gave me, her opinion was the same as her opinion was 2 years ago. And it's very clearly reflected in the minutes from back then. So that those minutes have also gone to council. So I felt like I owed you an explanation. I'm not skipping planning commission. It just seemed like, here are the facts to council. If it comes back to you, you'll know why also. And it's only a work session. We're just asking, does council want to
Developer or somebody care about that?
So the example that is being discussed, and it's in the council packet.
And also you could charge more money.
Yeah, you're not selling a unit at 100% AMI, you're selling a
True.
a brand new unit. at-
Basically.
Yeah,
to
so
a-
who
just
does
to a
this,
rich-
does this benefit what the intent of the code is, which is
And you're
to
adding
get
density.
affordable housing? And they get the density, that's where they win, is getting more density, not get to.
Yeah, and one of these cases, in the case of the letter written, there's a couple we know who would utilize it if this went into effect. But the one who's requesting is in a condo building that's already built out. They want to convert their commercial unit to residential, but there's no density. So they said, we'll pay the money to convert to residential if we can have it be live work. And therefore that is a discussion. You don't need to comment, we don't need to discuss it. I just background and it's at council on Tuesday. So work session, yes. And Lena did give me her opinion, which I'm happy to see by the nods and the conversation is agreed upon. It's still in the minutes of 2 years ago. So.
Do you remember when the council said they defer to us on housing stuff? So.
And they
Don't really, but.
It's a nice.
Yeah.
That was my last update.
What about food stress, that application from 10 years ago?
The buildings are gonna be moving as of yesterday on November 11th to 25 Water Tower.
We've been prepping that site.
That
They
is
want to know.
extremely weather dependent, because to move buildings, you can't have snow. I'm following. Sorry. Yeah. It was supposed to happen on the 30th start and it'll take a few days. They have a right-of-way permit with Public Works. They're working on a moving plan. They're talking to Summit Stage to make sure the logistics of the bus isn't the same time the building's coming in.
When was that application approved? Cause I can tell you,
About 100
only
years
Andy and I were on that.
Bill Gibson was the planner.
Yeah, like, I mean, this seems a little absurd to me that is allowed that many administrative things, like, I feel like Folks Rest needs to come back in front of planning commission.
So I can pass it on, but I can tell you that per town manager and town attorney, it legally can move forward.
Yeah, no, I think I would just say, like, I understand where that project is, but just in the future, not to
Code
keep
change,
extending
yeah.
approvals, yeah.
Yeah, like, cause they've now had a construction fence up for 2 years and no construction. And also, what is the allowing of construction fence on day one? Like,
And
seems
that is
like.
what we're
we do amend that
doing
too.
bonds actually for them. So we have changed our internal.
Vegetation and stuff
Mhm.
since. Any updates on the center building?
So that fence came down.
They come back. or-
They don't have financing. As the director of ComDev, I gave them their expiration is now June. I did give them an extension because it was get the fence down and I'll give you one extension. And so we did that through the code. The reason for that also is because they didn't even have financing when we talked a few months ago. And then it got the fence down, which we've been hearing a lot about. Yeah, And as a, like, we can also talk about coming to planning commission. It's a hard line when people submit these for the, and the code just lets them be an admin approval.
Yeah.
But
Cause that's a huge,
Been a while.
huge
Yeah.
block.
town.
No, I'm
Oh.
sorry. I'm
Picturesque.
outside.
And so the historic, they're moving the Staley Rouse, the little cabins, 3 little cabins. The blacksmith shop in the back, I thought was a historic building, but it looks like they're just tearing it down.
Correct. That one's being torn down because it couldn't be kept. That all got agreed before I came to the.
It was on the historic, they were supposed to try and protect
It
it,
was in
right?
the historic covenant, if this, then that, and somehow,
We lost it.
yeah. Yep. But yeah, so you actually should see movement moving forward, at least on the site in the next couple of weeks.
I have another question related to a past project, the one on Forest Drive.
Oh, yes.
Do we have anything in the code related to construction noise?
Well, we've got that memorized. Very good question right now to poor Joe upstairs.
It's loud, the blasting.
All day long.
7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Everywhere.
Posting about it.
I saw the code enforcement officer. He's tired of it.
Well, they haven't blasted, right?
No, they're chipping.
Like, I wish they would have blasted.
One
And
blast.
Katie, are we watching that fence? Cause there's no way that fence is, like the fence up at the top of the hill where we're worried about kids falling in is laying down.
Oh,
The fence is laying down.
Okay, I'll have Joe. go on.
Very
Really into that fence.
Yeah, the one up at the top of the
The
cut.
corner, that like, if they go beyond that, they pass the steep slope.
Right.
Permit is in place
I
pretty
know.
solidly, but
But
up on the hill,
Okay.
not so much.
Not
the
so
kids.
much.
We'll get
And-
on that.
And they're, I still wonder, because as soon as they go 1 foot over, they have a project that cannot pass code. So
Yeah.
what do we do?
So our code enforcement guy is going out every week, but now Chris is gonna check to see if somehow that fell off the radar the last couple of weeks because we didn't hear. the
Well, I
first
just want to know it's in the same spot, because if they're like propping it back up and it's a foot over, then
We need
their
like
project
an
doesn't pass.
all the survey markings and
Yes.
everything, yeah, so they can.
It actually took 3 site visits to get it right out
right.
there.
Yeah.
Thank you
Well-
for staying on that. That is a lot on you,
So
so.
we appreciate you telling us it's
Yeah.
down, because that, we thought it was being checked, but maybe we need to get that.
I mean, it was, when I went by it a few days ago, but they were hammering furiously at the time, so
They did take it down when they're doing work and then they put it back up.
I
So to
don't know
answer
what they're
your
doing.
question,
but it was laying
Construction
there.
hours are weekdays, and it's basically, and I joked when I said, Joe knows this off his head, it's 7 or 8, there's a certain time in the morning. And then it goes until sunset or an hour after or something, and you cannot work on Sundays. And so anyone who's called us has been told that and been told, please tell us if it is, no complaints have came in that it's occurring outside of hours. So unless we get those, our hands are kind of tied. And we understand, I mean,
I feel like there's like something we should consider around construction noise impacts.
Yeah.
And that's hard to measure, but like,
I'm sorry.
we own the house like 2 away and our poor tenants are listening to that.
Yeah.
Every time they're.
I wonder if there could be a code change in terms of like environmentally significant areas that we protect or just quality of life areas that we protect and say you do not drill into this granite face or something like that. I mean, that's, I don't know, you know.
It's a tricky one, because I mean, you can't take somebody's right to develop that sideway, but that's,
Yes,
yeah, we
but-
all
but you
knew that was gonna be a huge problem.
Just because something is platted back in the 60s is having more, you know, like based on the size of the lot, it could have more units. It doesn't mean that whoever platted it at that time is thinking, and I think current codes can change to significantly reduce that density.
Well, and the problem there was that they went 20 feet down into the bedrock. And that's what we
Yeah.
saw, that was gonna be
That's-
a problem, was a 20-foot vertical cut in the bedrock.
Mhm.
And, you know, if there were some way we could have asked them to stay on top of the rock, at least, they could have had that building envelope. But we all knew that it was gonna be a really lot of hammering, because they showed us it was bedrock, it was out an outcropping of bedrock, so the entire cut is through bedrock, so, yeah.
I feel like it's similar to, and again, this is my ignorance and I'm just gonna get on my soapbox for a second. This has no bearing on anything. But like, same with the wetlands, like if we could move that property 5 feet into the wetlands and affect wetlands, I feel like it would be better for everybody at the end of the day, but they're just meeting code so that they don't have to do anything hard, right? And there's not a way to like change that in policies, but I just wish there was some like common sense collaboration on some of these.
Were you the one who got in the excavator and started it and left it running all night?
Did somebody do that? Well, I read this book called Hey Dude Live, the Monkey Wrench Gang. He used to go around and pour sugar into their gas tank. So if anybody's looking for a way, apparently pouring sugar into the gas tank. That's all.
We're gonna be the first to interview you.
All right, anything else? I know everyone wants to get out of here.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, one question. Are we really gonna let an outdoor restaurant fly? How's
So,
that fit code? Heating the outdoors, or energy code, just curious. How the staff feels.
so the town does not have REMP in effect yet. So they can pay, if they want to spend the money to use gas outdoors. Right now, they submitted that application a couple of months ago. The town is still working on, it had got installed with our former building division, so we gave it to our new building consultant to work on for us.
But so it is an allowable use to heat the outdoors.
It is right now.
At the moment.
And we have very clear, and it's in the comp plan draft, that we will be moving forward with REP. The council told staff to do it. It got put on community development. And so we gave it to the building division because that's who it made sense, but then it didn't go anywhere. And so it's been a staff time problem moving it forward.
Just keep an eye on light safety. That's the one thing that you come up against with that. You know, not allowing heated sidewalks is a tricky one when they're really necessary for public safety. So that's a tricky one. See how we end up wording that.
And with credit to Rick, our former building official, he felt like the way it was written for Breck was not 100% right for Frisco. And that was why we could have taken the environmental sustainability department proposed just bringing Breck's in. And he was like, this isn't the most practical for our town. And so it's a good thing we're looking at it, but understandably, it's been delayed in community development. So.
But it just seems so absurd to be like, have this green energy code and then allow these kind of uses.
We're getting there.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Thanks for dinner.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't know they did catering.
It's good. And well, Kim took care of it. I shouldn't say how easy it was to order and
And they also have like another option where they have like, kind of like tapas, like we can choose like 3 different from these tiers. And there's some things that aren't on their regular menu. So if you ever want to try something else.